Don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid.
That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British Airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live as ever from the heart of Westminster with all the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a corker of a show and here's what's on it. Yesterday, Lord Herman, the Attorney-General and David Lammy joined forces to smear Nigel Farage for a 50-year-old racism claims. Today, the fake news media has accused Reform of a ludicrous backroom pact with the Tories. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? And the Women's Institute and the Girl Guides have both banned trans applicants after the guides were threatened with legal action by a furious mother. With April's Supreme Court's ruling finally being acknowledged, is this a long overdue breakthrough of common sense? Mounting calls for a national inquiry into grooming gangs in Scotland, with Labour demanding clarity and experts warning too little is known. Previously hidden care records show devastating failures to protect children. And the German president begins his 3-day state visit today, joining the King and the Queen at Windsor. And it comes as a major £20 million UK-Germany investment deal is announced. We'll bring you all the latest, and that's all coming up in your next hour. You didn't Want to show us a pleasure to have your company. Yesterday, Lord Herman, the Attorney-General, and David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, were demanding apologies from Nigel Farage for 50-year-old allegations that he completely and utterly denies, presuming him guilty before even a chance of one of those jury trials that David Lammy is getting rid of. Front page news on the FT today, talk of a pact with Reform been dismissed as ludicrous, ridiculous by Reform. But why are the Remainer media briefing against Nigel Farage? And look who's hoved into view. It's Sir Lenny Henry, launching a new alliance with Paul Weller, a bunch of other champagne socialists, Paloma Faith, Charlotte Church, the TUC, the NEU, Britain's biggest teaching union. They're all joining forces, an unholy alliance, to try and do their very, very best to torpedo Reform UK and Nigel Farage. I've been saying for weeks and weeks and months on this show, we're going to see the dirtiest general election campaign in history. It's going to be our version of Donald Trump 2016 and 2020 on steroids. Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so. Or you can scan our new QR code, as you can see on the screen there now for you youngsters. But before that, it's time for news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories: a fiery first Prime Minister's question since the budget, with Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashing over claims the government has lurched into total shambles. The exchanges opened with the Conservative leader questioning who inside Labour's cabinet is briefing against the government, and claimed a CEO with Rachel Reeves's record would have been fired.
We now know that the head of the OBR was forced out for telling the truth, that the Chancellor did not need to raise taxes on working people. We also know that the Chancellor was briefing the media, twisting the facts, also she could break her promises and raise taxes.
Sir Keir Starmer hit back defending Rachel Reeves. He told MPs his government is fixing the mess the Conservatives left.
She's completely losing the plot. She says take responsibility. Under this Chancellor, Mr Speaker, growth is up this year, defeating and beating the forecast. Wages are up, more since the general election than in 10 years of the Tories. We've had, I think, 5 interest rate cuts, NHS waiting lists are down, we've had record investment into this country. We're turning the page on their austerity and reckless experiment on borrowing. I'd compare that record to them every day of the week.
In other news, the Health Secretary says he's had it with the British Medical Association, accusing the Doctors' Union of juvenile delinquency as resident doctors plan a 5-day walkout just before Christmas. Wes Streeting says the strike, starting on the 17th of December, is irresponsible and high risk, warning the NHS is already under New Year's Eve level pressure. The BMA says it's still open to calling off the strike, but the government says it cannot go further on pay. Wes Streeting says industrial action now poses a different order of magnitude of danger for patients.
It is unnecessary. Resident doctors have had a 28.9% pay rise, the highest in the public sector 2 years on the trot, and I suspect there aren't many people watching this morning who've had a 28.9% pay rise. So I think it's completely unreasonable for the doctors to be threatening strike action. It's also unnecessary. We want to work with them on things like increasing the number of jobs and training places and their working conditions. So they've got a government that wants to work with them.
In other news, the nursery worker who filmed himself sexually abusing children over several years has pleaded guilty to 26 offences. 45-year-old Vincent Chan from Finchley in North London admitted what prosecutors called a calculated and predatory pattern of abuse, targeting 4 children at a Bright Horizons nursery where he worked for almost 7 years. Police say Chan secretly recorded some of the abuse, including images in the most serious legal category. Detectives have now seized nearly 70 digital devices linked to him and warned their investigation is still ongoing. Families of all the 700 children who attended the nursery during his employment are being contacted with specialist support offered. He will be sentenced at a later date. Elsewhere, the Women's Institute says it will ban transgender women from becoming members, announcing the change will take effect from April next year. The organisation says it's acting with regret and sadness, but that April's Supreme Court ruling on biological sex leaves it with no choice if it wants to remain a recognised women's charity. Chief Executive Melissa Green says the organisation proudly welcomed trans women for more than 40 years and insists trans women are women, but formal membership will now be restricted to biological women only. The Kremlin insists it's wrong to say Vladimir Putin has rejected a US peace proposal for Ukraine after talks in Moscow ended with no compromise on Russia's demand for territorial concessions. Russian officials called the meeting with Donald Trump's envoys constructive, but Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his team is now preparing for fresh talks in the US. It comes as NATO's foreign ministers gather in Brussels, with EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen confirms a provisional deal to end all Russian gas imports by 2027. Earlier, Vladimir Putin dismissed Europe's conditions, saying they're not acceptable and warning if Europe wants a war with us, we're ready right now. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have formally welcomed the German President and his First Lady to the UK, greeting them on the tarmac at Heathrow Airport on behalf of the King. The state visit then moved to Windsor, where the King and Queen greeted the German leader with a royal salute, military procession and national anthems. It marks the first German state visit to Britain in 27 years. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3277 and €1.1401. The price of gold is £9,691.96 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,691 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you very much. Now, yesterday, Lord Hermer and David Lammy joined forces to smear Nigel Farage for those 50-year-old racism claims. Or today, the so-called fake news media, as it's been called by Zia Yusuf, has accused Reform of a backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? Now, this also comes as a group of celebrities headed up by Sir Lenny Henry have formed the so-called Tether Alliance to keep out what they claim is the far right. The Daily Mirror adding Reform UK into that mix today, lumping them together with Tommy Robinson and all the ghouls of the far right. They claim to stand for hope, not racism. Is this, though, just a joined-up campaign and the beginning of the dirtiest general election campaign we will ever see this side of the Atlantic? That's today's conversation. I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and delighted to have in the studio the former Home Secretary, Conservative MP, Suella Braverman. Welcome to you all. Chris, let's start with you. Yesterday, guilty before proven innocent, Lord Hermer, the Attorney-General, Sir Keir Starmer's #1 legal attack dog, joining up, coincidentally, on the same morning with David Lammy, saying you must apologise for these offensive things, which Nigel Farage has denied even saying. Here we go again today. Briefs to the FT. The FT, the newspaper that probably despises Nigel Farage the most, the Remainers' Bible. Briefing. There's going to be a backroom deal between the Conservatives and Reform. Nigel Farage called it ludicrous, totally and utterly denied it, as has lots of senior Conservatives, including Kemi Badenoch. And now we're seeing Sir Lenny Henry, almost the funniest thing he's done since the 1980s, forming this group to try and campaign against the far right, which the Mirror saying includes Reform UK. Things are going to get really, really dirty. And I put it to you, this is going to be the dirtiest election in British history.
I think so, and it is just starting. There's no question that Nigel Farage thinks the establishment will do all it can to stop him getting in. He is trying to torpedo it, blow it up from within. He wants to, bring in unelected people to run government departments, not MPs. He's got no plans yet for the House of Lords. What's his plan there? The establishment is worried about what he might do. He is 10 points ahead of the two parties. I think Tories up 2 points, Labour on 21, Reform nearly 10 points ahead. So they are ahead. This new idea here against, they call it the far right, the Fontaine's DC, Perma Faith, Lenny Henry and others, together against the far right. They don't say who they're talking about in their press release. It's reported they mean Reform UK. And what the left will try and do is yoke in Reform UK with the far right. Of course, Nigel Farage has nothing to do with the far right, as he would describe it, is with Tommy Robinson. He would say that's different to where he is.
Well, but Keir Starmer has lumped them in with the far right since the Southport riots.
And he rode back from that after saying that earlier this year, saying that it was the far right's concern about the rape gangs and so forth. He doesn't quite go that hard, but he thinks he's not fit for office. But yeah, this is happening. I think the FT leak overnight. That is not where Nigel Farage is. Whenever he talks to you, even privately about this, he just can't stand the Tory party after that betrayal as he sees in 2019. He stood down 2/3 of his candidates, of course, almost bequeathing that landslide to Boris Johnson and never got any thanks for it. For me, the deal happens post-election. We are similar to, I think Nigel Nelson was saying, to 2010, when there's no talk of any deal until there has to be. When you get post-election, if no party's got enough for a majority, if Reform can do one with the Tories to keep Labour out for 5 years, I think that's when it happens, but not before.
Theresa May, the DUP. I mean, it does happen in politics. But for now, everybody is saying this is another.
But this is done, Martin, to hurt Nigel Farage. That briefing in the FT, I think, was to hurt Nigel Farage, to make it look like, well, it's all the same thing.
OK, Suella Braverman, let's bring you in at this point. You must get asked about this reform question so often, I'm not going to ask you. But let's talk about what many people do perceive to be a huge establishment attack. Not only is it Lenny Henry and Paul Weller, but it's the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, the NEU, that's Britain's biggest teaching union, are all coming together with Lord Hermer yesterday, with David Lammy. You've been inside government, inside the civil service, and how they seem to be just up against the forces of the Conservative Party when you were Home Secretary. Do you think we're in for just the mother of all dirty fights?
Well, I think this is a precursor of what is to come. And the lefty establishment in all those organisations that you mention, the celebrity class, the elites, who don't have to deal with the real-world impacts of illegal migrants staying in their town centres or having to wait 12 hours in A&E. They don't have to deal with a lot of the world that many of us have to deal with. They are running scared. They're running scared because they see the polls. They see that the majority of British people are fed up with high tax, high migration, and a contempt that the Prime Minister and the ruling classes seem to have for the majority of patriotic Brits. And they are voting with their feet. And judging by the polls, they're voting reform. And that's why they're soaring ahead. And the left-wing establishment is absolutely petrified of this. This would be a disaster for them. We have seen this before. It's not the first time. We saw it with Brexit.
Yeah.
The establishment close ranks and do everything to try and stop the people from voting with their conscience and their heart and their minds. They didn't win. We've seen it with Trump in America. The establishment pile on to try and stop him winning. It didn't work. I very much hope that patriots see this for what it is and they keep voting with their feet in the way that is a way for strong borders, law and order, patriotism and a restoration of common sense in our economy.
Do you think we are seeing the emergence of this kind of kitchen sink strategy? As we saw with Donald Trump, it was everything.
Yeah.
Because the entire machine of the establishment was geared against him. It didn't work. Do you think it will be fanged in Britain? Do people see this for what it is now?
I think they do. You can see that from the recent attempts to smear Nigel Farage and others as racists. I think we've seen it so many times before. You know, what the left do, when they don't agree with you, they call you a racist.
They did it to you, of course.
Having been called a Nazi and a racist more times than I can remember, simply for wanting to stop the votes. I've really seen the effect of it and been on the receiving end of it. I feel quite strongly about it. It's such a puerile, unsophisticated character of debate, and it's wrong. It's also wrong. But they do that when they have no other arguments to use.
Suella, it's the first time we've seen you since the budget. It's the first time we've seen you since the OBR chief has quit. You've written a stinging piece in the Telegraph today about the OBR. You think it's time we got the chop. Tell us why.
Yeah, I think I reached this view a few years ago when I was Home Secretary, and I really saw the misplaced orthodoxy that the OBR works on and its disproportionate influence or power that it has in government. I wanted to cut unprecedented levels of net migration, legal migration. That's the visas, not the boats. And yet, one of the biggest obstacles I came up against was the OBR. The OBR would keep saying, no, we can't do that, Suella, because that's going to affect GDP, because more immigrants into the country is good for the economy. That's what the OBR believed. And the OBR loomed very largely over the Prime Minister, over the Chancellor, over my cabinet colleagues, and they all were influenced, and they all objected to cuts in legal migration because of that very flawed orthodoxy that the OBR parrots.
It's also incredibly expensive. Cost the taxpayer almost £6 million a year.
Yeah, it's very expensive, and I do question what value it has, given that it's got a decade of flawed projections consistently, and even on its own admission, it overestimates productivity, it underestimates public sector borrowing, underestimates inflation, underestimates tax receipts, and gives an overly optimistic view of the economy, which lulls chancellors into a false sense of security. So its modelling is wrong. And this is not just about pedantry. They make errors to the tune of tens of billions of pounds, which can affect whole budgets and whole departmental budgets. This is really serious, flawed economic modelling, and combined with their unaccountable status and the disproportionate level of influence they wield in government, I think it's time for it to go.
Strong words. Chris Hope.
Well, just a quick one, Suella Braverman, on this talk around the Tory party and reform. Do you agree with me that the time for that is post-election? That before going into election, you won't have the two parties coming together?
I do. I think it's premature, really. I know it's a fascination for lots of commentators and journalists and MPs, but the reality is that nothing really can have any meaning until we know how the MP numbers stand, and that only happens after a general election. And also, both party leaders have categorically ruled it out, which is a kind of prerequisite for any deal to happen.
But everyone rules it out at this stage in the game. I mean, we have to think of what happened in 2010, and certainly by election time, when a coalition looked more likely, David Cameron was putting a lot of preparation into the whole thing, which is why he got the coalition with Nick Clegg and Labour didn't. But by that time, he decided which ministers should be, Liberal Democrat ministers should be embedded in his government. He did prepare for it, but it was only the lead up to the election it happened.
Yeah. Well, there's some discussion about that, because if you remember, after the 2010 general election, there was also talk of Gordon Brown forming a coalition with the Lib Dems. So it was all up in the air.
But Nick Clegg didn't like Gordon Brown as much as he liked David Cameron.
Exactly. That was why. But it could have easily been a Brown-Clegg government, actually, and it really was
Gordon
a matter
would have needed another 11 MPs from a different party. At least with David Cameron, he had the numbers then to add the Lib Dems to it.
So it all depends on your results at the general election.
A Brown-Clegg coalition. A lot of people might think, what a bullet we dodged with that one. On a serious point, Nigel, I want to get your take on this constant talk, mainly from me, of the entire establishment. It just seems to be every single day now there's a fresh adversary for Nigel Farage. This is going to get very, very ugly.
Well, it is, but I mean, politics is a dirty business. I mean, Suella just mentioned the kind of abuse that you had in your day. Yes. Rachel Reeves at the moment is getting an awful lot of abuse. So I don't think this is actually unusual. You're absolutely right. The establishment does not want a Nigel Farage government, but that's the political game. That's what people go into politics for. They have a thick skin to deal with that.
OK, thank you very much, Nigel Nelson, Chris O, and especially Suella Braverman. Always a pleasure to have your company here in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed. It's time now for a brand new Great British giveaway, and your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible 85 grand in tax-free moolah could be yours just in time for the new year. Here's the details you need to enter.
It's the big one. Your chance to win a whopping £85,000 in tax-free cash. The largest cash prize we've given away to date. That's like over £7,000 a month extra in your bank account each month for 12 whole months. That's a year of yes. Yes to holidays. Yes to treats. Yes to shopping trips. Yes to home improvements. What would you say yes to? For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 9th of February 2026. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, and still to come, more reaction to Sir Lenny Henry, who is among the celebrities backing a new anti-far right campaign aimed, they say, at combating the rise of reform. We'll get reaction to this, and also next we'll be finding out whether Scotland could be holding its own rape gangs inquiry. We join Charlie Peters. This is GB News for 5 months on the bounce, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray,
Are you a human trafficker?
boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on a BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 3:24. You've been Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, Scottish Labour will urge the government today to clarify whether a grooming gang inquiry will be held and call for independent oversight of Police Scotland's review. Let's now speak with GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who's been leading the charge on this since the very beginning. Charlie Peters, this report needs to go ahead. Tell us all about the latest.
Well, big update from Scotland this afternoon, Martin, because the SNP government is set to announce, according to sources in Edinburgh, that they will be launching a review into how grooming gangs have been handled in Scotland, which appears to mirror the process that Sir Keir Starmer took earlier this year when he asked Baroness Louise Casey to conduct a rapid audit, and that led to the public inquiry announced in June. It does appear that perhaps the SNP are adopting the same strategy in Scotland, reacting to a lot of pressure from politicians calling for an inquiry, particularly from the Conservatives in Holyrood, but also from survivors who have spoken out in recent months, saying that the problem does exist in Scotland as well. Last month, GB News spoke with a victim known as Taylor, who described for the first time how she'd been abused by at least 10 men in Glasgow, and she shared her care records with us that demonstrated there were missed opportunities for Police Scotland to investigate her case. We also spoke with a survivor called Fiona Goddard from Bradford, who told us that she was trafficked to Glasgow as well around the same time that Taylor was being abused. So amid all of this mounting pressure, it does appear that the government is set to announce that review, which could lead to an inquiry. Well, earlier, the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Anas Sarwar, spoke with our colleague Tony Maguire about his reaction to this review.
Well, first of all, I must say and pay tribute to Joni's relentless campaigning on this issue, but she's not been alone in relentlessly campaigning on this issue. We know that grooming gangs exist in Scotland. We know there are victims of grooming gangs, but what we don't know is whether we have robust systems historically to deal with those cases, and therefore we need to build the confidence that we'll have robust systems leading into the future of these cases. This is a Labour business debate that's happening in the Parliament, where we're demanding this independent review. As you know how parliamentary processes work, parties are allocated slots on a rotational basis. This is the slot has become available, and we're using that slot to demand an independent review, being really clear, not a review just done by the police into themselves, not a government review looking into itself. It has to be an independently led review that looks at the scale of the problem here in Scotland, and if that review, independent review, says there must be an inquiry, then there must be an inquiry, similar to what happened down south.
Well, in September, the Scottish Conservatives put forward a motion calling for a full and fearless inquiry into grooming gangs in the country. It was rejected by the SNP government and the Greens, with the First Minister John Swinney saying he did not think it was necessary. There was further controversy as well, because Angela Constance, the Justice Secretary in Scotland, said that Alexis Jay, who led the ICSA inquiry in England and Wales, Constance claimed that Alexis Jay did not want an inquiry in Scotland. Well, last night, Alexis Jay clarified her stance, speaking out publicly on the issue, saying she did think that further investigation was needed in Scotland. And Russell Finlay has also been speaking to GB News today, giving his reaction to this announcement of this upcoming review.
Alexis Jay is a well-respected, world-leading expert in child sexual abuse and exploitation, and it can only be a good thing that after the SNP government misrepresented her views to oppose a grooming gangs inquiry, they are now co-opting her, albeit in what seems to be a very limited and narrow way. So we will see what that work produces. We support the fact that she's on board, and that can hopefully be a good thing, and hopefully try and rebuild some of the lack of trust in the SNP government.
Well, I've been speaking with survivors and their family members this afternoon, Martin, and I have had a lot of encouraging perspectives from them, saying that they think this is a step closer to the level of investigation that they want, but also the truth that they want to hear in Scotland. Also, I'll say that at this point, I do think, Martin, that a full inquiry does seem now like a political inevitability, especially after this review is set to reveal so many more cases. We're working on other stories in Scotland. Taylor's testimony last month is by no means the last that GB News will be reporting on in the coming weeks and months. There's a lot more to come out of Scotland, and I think this review will reveal just how much further investigation is required. So perhaps, Martin, this is very similar to what the Labour Party, the Labour government did in England and Wales. They got a bit of political headroom not to cave into pressure from political opposition and perhaps also GB News, but rather to have their own review and then launch an inquiry on their own terms.
Well, long overdue justice for the survivors. And Charlie Peters, once again, I salute you for all your work keeping up the pressure. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today, Charlie. Always a pleasure. Let's get back to the studio. A quick bit of reaction from Nigel Nelson. Here's what I find confusing about this, Nigel, is that the Labour Party and everyone in the SNP voted against a rape gang inquiry on a national level in the beginning. Then they were dragged kicking and screaming into having them nationally. And now this appears to me like the SNP are playing politics on this matter. They voted against it at the outset.
Yeah, and I think that what we're seeing here in Scotland mirrors what happened in England and Wales. So if you remember here that the argument was the Alexis J inquiry took 7 years, reported in 2022, that was enough. That had actually dealt with the issue. A national inquiry wasn't needed after that. Then we got the idea of these little regional inquiries that were going to go ahead. And then we got Louise Case's report, which suggested that we really did need a national inquiry. Scotland appears to have gone down the same route.
But they originally said that it was politicking to ask for a rape gang inquiry, and with the whiff that this was something that the right wing wanted to do. Now, suddenly, they're seeing sense. This is the total U-turn.
Well, it is a U-turn. You're absolutely right. And it's exactly the same U-turn that happened in Westminster.
Yeah, they were forced into a U-turn by a public outrage.
Yes, that's right. And also the work that Charlie did on this. So, yes, you're absolutely right. That the U-turns have been forced. The U-turn was forced in Westminster and it's been forced in Scotland too.
OK, thank you very much there, Nigel Nelson. We have a statement from the Scottish Government and a spokesman told GB News this. The Scottish Government's absolute priority is protecting children from harm and tackling sexual abuse and exploitation in all of its forms. The current work of the expert National Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Strategic Group is considering previous inquiries, evidence and practices across social work, education, police and healthcare to prioritise and agree further actions and recommendations for national improvement. Police Scotland is also reviewing recent relevant investigations. Their collective work will ensure informed, evidence-based decisions are taken on the need for further independent inquiries or reviews. Now, still to come, Sir Lenny Henry. He's among celebrities backing a new anti-far right campaign aimed at combating the rise of people, including reform. What do these lovies know about the real world? We get full reaction to this. And also, the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is visiting Downing Street to meet Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Live pictures there, as we can see, the talks as part of the state visit to Britain. Live pictures there of the German President walking down the world-famous Downing Street to meet Sir Keir Starmer, as well as meeting the King and Queen Camilla. Of course, a trade deal on the table, potentially, to talk about the alliance between Germany and the United Kingdom. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer often much more comfortable hobnobbing with world leaders when he is facing the public in Britain. Now the German president walking through those doors at Downing Street. The Christmas tree lights were turned on a couple of days ago. This year, not by Sir Keir Starmer. He was much maligned when he did it last year, but an 11-year-old boy. There goes the German president inside that hallowed door. OK, now it's 1:30. It's time for your latest news headlines, and here is Tatiana.
Martin, thank you very much. The top stories this hour: a Commons clash as Kemi Badenoch claimed the Chancellor might even have been prosecuted for market abuse over last week's budget. Sir Keir Starmer said the Tory leader's completely losing the plot, insisting Rachel Reeves did not mislead anyone. The Health Secretary says he's had it with the BMA, accusing the union of juvenile delinquency ahead of a 5-day resident doctor strike just before Christmas, where Streeting warns the walkout is irresponsible and high risk. A nursery worker has admitted a calculated and predatory campaign of sexual abuse against 4 children in his care. 45-year-old Vincent Chan pleaded guilty to 26 offences as police continue to examine dozens of devices and families demand answers over how his offending went undetected for years. A festive state visit at Windsor as the King and Queen welcomed Germany's president for the UK's first German state visit in 27 years. And we have just seen the German president arrive to meet Sir Keir Starmer at number 10. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
You can now
Now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather around for many of us for a little bit longer, but generally through the rest of the week and into the weekend it's looking pretty unsettled. There's a front to the west of us and various areas of low pressure that are going to come through, so yes, there will be some rain, there will be some strong winds to watch out for as well. For the time being though, actually through the rest of today, apart from some showers towards the west and perhaps the south as well, there's a lot of dry weather around, some bright spells turning into clear spells through the start of the night. Though across western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, but also western parts of Wales and southwest England, we are going to see some rain pushing through as we go overnight. Further east ahead of the rain, where we stay dry with clear skies, could turn a bit chilly again, could see some fog patches developing once more. Then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a wet start then across parts of Wales and some central southern parts of England. Drier but cloudier towards the southeast, some showery bursts pushing into the southwest. Heavy persistent rain across Northern Ireland, some high rainfall totals could cause some issues here. A bit damp across northwest England and southwest Scotland, a bit drier further north and east because that rain won't have pushed through just yet. Like I said, there could be some fog patches as well down that eastern side, so watch out for those. They could cause some difficult driving conditions. That rain eventually does make its way further north and eastwards, but it pushes through quite slowly, so it could take quite a while to clear away from parts of Scotland and northeast England. It could be until after dark that we see things turning drier here. Elsewhere, something drier, brighter following in from the west, but also a few showers to watch out for. Slightly fresher air coming in as well behind this front, and so if anything, temperatures tomorrow are going to be down a couple of degrees compared to today. Most places away from the northeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy and a bit damp, will turn drier and clearer as we go into tomorrow night. So that means it's going to be quite a chilly one with some fog again on Friday morning. But like I said at the start, unsettled weather to come into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation. Because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Road users, note restrictions on the M8 eastbound at junction 14 due to a broken vehicle. In Cumbria, congestion on the A595 northbound between the A5093 and A5086 adds 40 minutes to travel. Derbyshire's A38 southbound between the A50 and A5132 experiences 15-minute delays. In Birmingham, the M6 northbound collision between junctions 6 and 7 closes one lane, causing 30-minute delays. And on the trains, Grand Central and Great Northern services report disruptions between Peterborough, London and Cambridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 3:38 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, the singer Paloma Faith and the comedian Suella Henry are among a group of celebrities backing a new campaign aimed at countering the rise of the far right. And in that, the Daily Mirror includes reform. They're also planning street protests and against people such as Tommy Robinson. And the Together Alliance, a group of campaigners, unions and civil society groups, is urging people across the country to stand up for unity in the face of what they say are attempts to fuel division. But is this just a bunch of out-of-touch millionaires trying to tell the rest of us how to think? Well, that's the conversation. I'm joined in the studio by the political consultants Dominic Moffat, and of course, it's still with GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Dominic, let's start with you. Yesterday, we were saying Lord Hermer was joining forces with David Lammy to try and get Nigel Farage to apologise for 50-year-old allegations which he denies. And here we go today. It's the champagne socialists, the millionaires, the lovies, Suella Henry, Charlotte Church, Paloma Faith, joining forces with the unions, the TUC, the NEU. Is this going to come to anything? Or once again, is it a lot of left-wing lovies blowing hot air?
Well, I, for one, absolutely celebrate the idea of people having enough conviction in politics to go out and say something on the streets. I think that's a fantastic thing that these people care enough. This is done in the face of the largest far-right rally in the UK earlier this year, with Tommy Robinson speaking, and I think that is to be applauded.
Most people on that wouldn't call themselves far-right, by the way.
Ultimately, what I would say is we saw Red Wedge in the 1980s, we saw the same campaign against Brexit, and where did they get? They got absolutely nowhere, because this isn't something that changes political views. People who already agree with you go on a march, and people who don't agree with you don't even notice it's happening.
Dominic, is there anything different about this, though, by the fact you've got the National Education Union, Britain's biggest teaching union, getting involved, the TUC? This is a calcifying, a coming together of well-funded, well-organised, expansive left-wing groups. There's a few lovies in front of it, of course, a few champagne socialists, millionaires in their own right. But this is a joined-up campaign.
I think it's a campaign against racism and the far right. And I know that you keep talking about reform being included, but if you look at the Alliance website, they're very clear that reform is not part of what they're campaigning against. They're not mentioned at all.
Their friendly press are briefing reform. They're putting them. This is what
you said the Daily Mail. I don't think the Daily Mail is
Daily Mirror.
Okay.
Dominic, you know how this works. They won't be nakedly open about it on their own press release, their own website. But their sympathetic media is briefing against Farage left, right, and centre. They're putting him into the same Venn diagram as all of the bogeymen of the right. That's what they do.
Boys at School with Nigel Farage said he made horrific comments 50 years ago.
He's denied them.
Well, he's denied them, but the same people say that he did make them. And I think it would be right, if he did make those comments, for him absolutely to apologise. Clearly he denies he made them, but I think if he did, he should apologise. It's a positive campaign to stand up against racism on the streets of the UK. I'm delighted to see it's happening. I think it's going to be... there's going to be a lot more of this over the coming year, and if we see Reform doing well in May elections, which I think we would all expect them to, there will be a lot more of this conversation to come.
But is it a positive thing to accuse everybody who disagree with it of being racist? It didn't work in America, it didn't work with Brexit, and as you've already said, it probably won't work this time. In fact, it might calcify people against them.
I am very comfortable, and I think a lot of people, most people in the UK would agree that people standing and marching with Tommy Robinson are racist, yes.
You think every single person who attended that rally, and the numbers have been contested, the left-wing media downsized it, as they always do, 250,000, while there were 1 million on the Remain march. A lot of people thought there were well over 500,000 people in London on that day. You think all of them were racist?
I think that if you're somebody who sides with Tommy Robinson, a man who has repeatedly said incredibly inflammatory racist statements, you are a racist.
So you basically believe anybody who turned up on that march, the Unite the Kingdom march, you're saying they're racist?
There's a difference between joining a march because you're frustrated about certain things and standing with Tommy Robinson.
Dominic, I put it to you, you're part of the problem. You don't understand the British public at all, the same way as Lenny Henry doesn't. Totally and utterly tin-eared and out of touch. It was the same in Brexit, it's the same now, and I put it to you, the more you call people racist, the more they will turn against you.
I think that you'll see with this mass movement that's marching in March that there are a lot of people who do agree that Tommy Robinson is a racist and he is not welcome on the streets of the UK.
But to object to one person, but then to fan that out to include everybody. For example, would you say that everybody who's taken to the streets to march in favour of Palestine agrees with Hamas and agrees with gassing the Jews?
Not
because people on those marches did say that.
That's not that's not the people who are standing up at the front of those marches. They're not as closely associated with them as Tommy Robinson is.
By your reckoning,
and I also
by your reckoning, every single person on a march agrees with the person you believe to be the worst perpetrator, something you never do if it's a march for those on the left.
That isn't what I said. I explicitly said that there are people on that march who
You said everyone on that march was a racist.
No, I didn't. That is exactly what I didn't say. I said that that people who come on that march because they stand with Tommy Robinson are racist. There are people on that march who are frustrated about political issues and they are not necessarily standing there with Tommy Robinson and they are not racist.
Nigel Nelson, will this amount to anything or will it simply make people think, you know what, the entire establishment seems dead against political change and that's because their time is overdue. They need to go.
I think politics has become very polarised in this country. And you've mentioned Tommy Robinson, obviously, and the march there. There were a staggering number of people who turned out there. I don't think every one of those were racist. They may have turned out for a variety of different reasons. But however you look at it, the kind of support that Tommy Robinson gets personally I find concerning. What it comes down to celebrities coming out and trying to organise these things, again, it's something we've always had. Margaret Thatcher had Kenny Everett, Jeremy Corbyn had Stormzy, and so politicians tend to quite like to get a bit of celebrity endorsement. So
it doesn't work. Beyonce endorsed Hillary Clinton. You know, Kamala Harris was endorsed by Taylor Swift. None of it works because they're out of touch. They're millionaires. They haven't got a blooming clue what the working classes think.
As far as I can see, that I think you're probably right. I don't think celebrities help. But the point I'm making is that politicians and those involved in politics do court celebrities to help them out. But because politics is polarised, you'd expect a movement like this to attract an awful lot of people when they arrange the demonstration.
Daubney Moffat, we've seen in the past significant numbers mobilised on the pro-Palestine marches. Are you expecting this to be a big... We all know those on the left get very invigorated by the thought of a revolution, particularly in the spring. Are you thinking this is going to be a significant street presence against Reform UK?
Well, again, it's not a protest against Reform UK, and they've been very clear about that. But no, I do not expect there to be a significant presence on the street. I do not think it will match up to the Palestine protests that we saw earlier this year.
OK, Daubney Moffat, always appreciate you coming out. Sincerely do. Let me shake your hand. Always part friends. Nigel Nelson, always an absolute pleasure. Thank you to you both. Now, coming up, sales of jacket potatoes. Yeah, the old Jack Spud. But full-fat products have soared this year, and we'll find out why from the so-called Spudman himself, the legend. No jackets required. If you're in search of some holiday sun, then here is the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The weather's looking quite mixed across the Mediterranean through tomorrow and much of this week. There's further heavy rain towards the east affecting Greece, Albania and other nearby nations. Could see some severe thunder, landslides, other impacts as a result because it has been so wet recently. Other areas will also see some rain at times. There will also be some drier, sunnier bursts, but it's often going to be relatively unsettled and there is a bit more rain for many to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
And I'm going to start with you. Talk to me about autism and why you got involved with this, because some people don't know the story as to why you set up Anna Kennedy Online.
Well, I have two sons. They're now 32 and 35, and I'm proud to say that my eldest son, Patrick, is in Stockholm at the moment on his own, so that's like a big step for him to go on holiday, and he's loving it. So they both were diagnosed fairly young, and the support at the time was just non-existent.
Yeah.
So we had to set up our own school, and then we set up a vocational college for my youngest son, Angelo.
Now, how do you know that they're autistic? Is there a blood test? Is it something where you have a list of symptoms? Or because some people say, oh, I've got ADHD and this and that, and I think sometimes people conflate it with autism. Are there parallels with the two, or are they totally separate? Because it's confusing.
They're very different from each other, both Patrick and Angelo. So Angelo was diagnosed fairly early at 2.5, 3. He passed all the milestones and then he just lost everything. His speech, eye contact, didn't want to be touched, didn't even want me to hug him at the time, running from one end of the room to the other, squealing, and it was just like, what is going on? And as a mum, you're thinking, what have I done wrong? Have I done something wrong?
Oh, no.
Patrick was diagnosed fairly early again, but he was premature, and I thought the difficulties that he was having because he was 11 weeks premature, I thought, is it because he had a bit of a difficult start, in and out of hospital, and then he was diagnosed at 4, and then we found out when he was 7, when he was struggling at school. He was finding school difficult, being bullied. So it's an autism spectrum condition, and if you feel that there might be, something that I'm not quite sure, I can't get a handle on it, please go and see your GP and just ask for your child to be assessed. But the difficulty at the minute is the waiting list is so long to get a diagnosis.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
It's 10 to 4 now. Fascinating new figures out today from Waitrose, the supermarket, tell us that the sale of jacket spuds and other full-fat products have rocketed as customers ditch ultra-processed foods. Now, the supermarket said this fundamental change in how customers shop may be a downstream effect of weight loss jabs, but are we witnessing the beginning of the great carb comeback? Who else to speak to now but the legend, the man himself, the Spudman. Spudman Ben, always an absolute pleasure, mate. You're an absolute legend, millions of social media followers. It will come as no surprise to you that the great jacket potato is making a huge comeback. Tell us why you think that is.
I think it's just good, honest, humble food. And yeah, as people get away from the ultra-processed stuff, and get back to their roots. And what's better than a good jacket potato?
Do you know what? Sales of jacket spuds have gone through the roof. The big potatoes at Waitrose. There's been a 178% increase in people looking at recipes. And I just think it's wholesome, it's affordable, it's comfortable, you know, it makes you feel good, it's back to basics. That, I think, at the moment, sums up the nation.
I think very much it being affordable as well, with the climate we're living in at the moment, it definitely helps knowing, you know, you're putting food on the table for a reasonable price, and people appreciate that. And it's good, honest food. You can feed your kids, and kids are seeing it on social media, and they're getting excited about it as well. So they're not like, you know, obviously everyone sees all the big brands, and now there's all these, you know, jacket potato people out there, and we're giving them something that's healthy and they want to eat it, and I think the parents appreciate that.
And Ben, I've seen your videos. They queue around the block to get to you. If people are in the mood to cook a potato tonight, of course we don't want to affect your sales, what is your sort of top of the pop spud recipe? Give it to us.
Oh, it's all about variety. It's picking the right potato is really important. Get a nice melody or a cara or culture or something like that, nice and big. In the oven, if you can, hour and 20, get a nice crispy skin on there. Loads of butter, loads of cheese, and a nice curry on top or something. That's my go-to.
Ooh. Now, that was a final little curveball there you threw at the last minute there, Ben. Curry on spud. Do you know what? That has got my vote. That is my tea. That's my tea sorted out. Ben Newman, the Spudman, the legend. We're going to have to leave it there. Go and sell some spuds. You're an absolute legend. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today on GB News. Let's get back to the studio. Nigel Nelson, there's something in that. It's about affordability. Yes. It's about comfort. It's about, you know, wanting to feel safe, comfortable, and it's affordable food.
Yeah, and it's easy. I mean, the point is that I think that I've been eating an awful lot of jacket potatoes over the last year, that suddenly we started having them, come home from work, so me and my wife go out, go to Waitrose, I'm sure we're the ones putting their sales up, go to Waitrose, get a few potatoes. It's as easy as putting a microwave in the oven, and it just takes a bit longer.
Do you microwave them first? Do you smear them with butter?
No. What you do is you just plug them straight in, cut them in half, and then put a load of butter on the top of them.
So I do. I scoop I bake them first. I scoop the inside out, put it in a bowl, cheese, mayonnaise, pepper, put it back in, rebake it. Bosh! I'm telling you, hard to beat.
Just the butter.
I've always bought full fat butter. You never catch me buying margarine. What kind of man do you think I am? Nigel Nelson, thank you very much indeed. I'm playing more still to come throughout the show, including Nigel Farage has slammed the so-called fake news media of a ludicrous backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? I'll be joined in the studio in a short moment's time by Zia Yusuf to get his take on that. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Expect warm spells
with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather around for many of us for a little bit longer, but generally through the rest of the week and into the weekend it's looking pretty unsettled. There's a front to the west of us and various areas of low pressure that are going to come through, so yes, there will be some rain, there will be some strong winds to watch out for as well. For the time being though, actually through the rest of today, apart from some showers towards the west and perhaps the south as well, there's a lot of dry weather around, some bright spells turning into clear spells through the start of the night. Though across western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, but also western parts of Wales and southwest England, we are going to see some rain pushing through as we go overnight. Further east ahead of the rain, where we stay dry with clear skies, could turn a bit chilly again, could see some fog patches developing once more. Then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a wet start then across parts of Wales and some central southern parts of England. Drier but cloudier towards the southeast, some showery bursts pushing into the southwest. Heavy persistent rain across Northern Ireland, some high rainfall totals could cause some issues here. A bit damp across northwest England and southwest Scotland, a bit drier further north and east because that rain won't have pushed through just yet. Like I said, there could be some fog patches as well down that eastern side, so watch out for those. They could cause some difficult driving conditions. That rain eventually does make its way further north and eastwards, but it pushes through quite slowly, so it could take quite a while to clear away from parts of Scotland and northeast England. It could be until after dark that we see things turning drier here. Elsewhere, something drier, brighter following in from the west, but also a few showers to watch out for. Slightly fresher air coming in as well behind this front, and so if anything, temperatures tomorrow are going to be down a couple of degrees compared to today. Most places away from the northeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy and a bit damp, will turn drier and clearer as we go into tomorrow night. So that means it's going to be quite a chilly one with some fog again on Friday morning. But like I said at the start, unsettled weather to come into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for our more than 2 million YouTube subscribers and more than 2 billion views. That is Britain watching, sharing and making its voice heard louder than ever before.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. In Cumbria, on the A595 northbound between the A5093 Silecroft and the A5086, there are significant delays of 50 minutes due to congestion. On the M6 northbound in Birmingham between junctions 6 and 7, a road traffic collision is causing 10-minute delays. In Kent, the M2 eastbound exit slip at junction 3 is partially closed due to a broken down vehicle causing some disruption. Drivers should exercise caution. And on the trains, major disruptions are reported on both Grand Central and Great Northern services between Peterborough and London, with some services additionally affected between Cambridge and London. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British Giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Blinds close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a corker of a show, and here's what's on our menu. Yesterday, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and David Lammy, the Deputy PM, they joined forces to smear Nigel Farage for 50-year-old racism claims. Today, the so-called fake news media has accused Reform of a ludicrous backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? And the Women's Institute and the Girl Guides have both banned trans applicants after the guides were threatened with legal action by a furious mother. With April's Supreme Court's ruling finally being acknowledged, is this a long overdue breakthrough of common sense? Mounting calls for a national inquiry into rape gangs in Scotland, with Labour demanding clarity and experts warning too little is known. Previously hidden care records show devastating failures to protect children. And the German president begins his three-day state visit today, joining the King and Queen at Windsor. Live pictures there earlier on of the president with Sir Keir Starmer at Downing Street. And this comes as a major £20 million UK investment is announced. And we'll bring you all of the very latest on that story. That's all coming up in your next hour. Once the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. Yesterday, the Attorney General, of course, appointed by Sir Keir Starmer, was demanding Nigel Farage apologise for 50-year-old allegations of racism, allegations Mr Farage has consistently denied. David Lammy chipped in. On the day he was cancelling jury trials, he became the jury, the judge of almost the executioner of Nigel Farage's reputation, demanding he apologise today. An unholy alliance of Sir Lenny Henry, Paul Weller, Paloma Faith, Charlotte Church, the Trade Union Congress and the National Education Union have joined up against Reform UK, saying they're going to take to the streets in March. Are we heading for the dirtiest election campaign in history? Our version of Donald Trump 2016 and 2020. Will they do anything and everything they can to try and keep the cosy establishment carrying on and keep Nigel Farage out of power? Get in touch. gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so. Or you can scan the QR code on your screens there now for all you youngsters. But now it's your headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories are fiery. First, Prime Minister's questions since the budget, with Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashing over claims the government has lurched into total shambles. The exchanges opened with the Conservative leader questioning who inside Labour's cabinet is briefing against the government, and claimed a CEO with Rachel Reeves's record would have been fired.
We now know that the head of the OBR was forced out for telling the truth, that the Chancellor did not need to raise taxes on working people. We also know that the Chancellor was briefing the media, twisting the facts, also she could break her promises and raise taxes.
Sir Keir Starmer hit back, defending Rachel Reeves. He told MPs his government is fixing the mess the Conservatives left.
She's completely losing the plot. She says take responsibility. Under this Chancellor, Mr Speaker, growth is up this year, defeating and beating the forecast. Wages are up, more since the general election than in 10 years of the Tories. We've had, I think, 5 interest rate cuts, NHS waiting lists are down, we've had record investment into this country. We're turning the page on their austerity and reckless experiment on borrowing. I'd compare that record to them every day of the week.
The Health Secretary says he's had it with the British Medical Association, accusing the Doctors' Union of juvenile delinquency as resident doctors plan a 5-day walkout just before Christmas. Wes Streeting says the strike, starting on the 17th of December, is irresponsible and high risk, warning the NHS is already under New Year's Eve level pressure. The BMA says it's still open to calling off the strike, but the government says it cannot go further on pay. Wes Streeting says industrial action now poses a different order of magnitude of danger for patients.
It is unnecessary. Resident doctors have had a 28.9% pay rise, the highest in the public sector 2 years on the trot, and I suspect there aren't many people watching this morning who've had a 28.9% pay rise. So I think it's completely unreasonable for the doctors to be threatening strike action. It's also unnecessary. We want to work with them on things like increasing the number of jobs and training places and their working conditions. So they've got a government that wants to work with them.
A nursery worker who filmed himself sexually abusing children over several years has pleaded guilty to 26 offences. 45-year-old Vincent Chan from Finchley in North London admitted what prosecutors called a calculated and predatory pattern of abuse, targeting 4 children at a Bright Horizons nursery where he worked for almost 7 years. Police say Chan secretly recorded some of the abuse, including images in the most serious legal category. Detectives have now seized nearly 70 digital devices linked to him and warn their investigation is still ongoing. Families of all the 700 children who attended the nursery during his employment are being contacted with specialist support offered. He will be sentenced at a later date. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the German president to Downing Street. It marks the first German state visit to Britain in 27 years. The president's visit will also include a state banquet, speaking in Parliament and visiting German footballers who play in the Premier League. Well, earlier, King Charles, Queen Camilla and the Prince and Princess of Wales welcomed him to the UK for his state visit. He and the First Lady were greeted by the German leader with a royal salute, a military procession and national anthems. The Prime Minister says the government will do more to help parents access baby formula at a more affordable price. Speaking at Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons the plans would help parents save up to £500 before a child's first birthday. The change is intended to help those who cannot or choose not to breastfeed their babies and alleviate child poverty. And the Kremlin insists it's wrong to say Vladimir Putin has rejected a US peace proposal for Ukraine after talks in Moscow ended with no compromise on Russia's demand for territorial concessions. Russian officials called the meeting with Donald Trump's envoys constructive, but Ukraine's President Zelensky says his team is now preparing for fresh talks in the US. It comes as NATO's foreign ministers gather in Brussels, while EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen confirms a provisional deal to end all Russian gas imports by 2027. Earlier, Putin dismissed Europe's conditions, saying they're not acceptable and warning if Europe wants a war with us, we're ready right now. And those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound will buy you $1.3277 and €1.1401. The price of gold is £9,691.96 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,691 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, yesterday, Lord Hermer, of course, and that is Sir Keir Starmer's Attorney General, and the Deputy PM, David Lammy, well, they joined forces to spear Nigel Farage for those 50-year-old racism claims. Today, the so-called fake news media, the Romaniac media, has also accused Reform of a backroom pact with the Conservatives. And that is a pact which Reform UK has totally and utterly rubbished as ludicrous. But here's the question. Will the establishment stop at nothing to try and keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? Because it comes today as a group of celebrities, millionaires, headed up by Sir Lenny Henry. They form the so-called Together Alliance to try and keep Nigel Farage out of number 10. They claim to stand for hope and not racism. They claim to stand against the far right, and their sympathetic media, the Daily Mirror, has also dragged Nigel Farage and Reform UK into that same Venn diagram of bogeymen. Are we about to witness the dirtiest general election in British history. I'm joined in the studio by GB News political editor Chris Hope and also GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Chris, here we are again. It seems every single day now we're seeing the emergence of a relentless dirty tricks campaign. Lord Hermer, yesterday, the Attorney General, demanding an apology for 50-year-old allegations that Richard Tice on this show yesterday said were completely fabricated nonsense. David Lammy, the Deputy Justice Secretary, also wading in. Today, here we go again. It's now the Lovies, the Champagne Socialists, the Millionaires, but importantly, the biggest teaching union, the NEU, the Trade Union Congress, all lining up to put the boot in and being fuelled by the ghosts of Brexit past. The Financial Times, the full Romaniac media machine, all spring into action. It's going to be a long 4 years at this rate.
It really will. I mean, no surprise, because Nigel Farage's poll lead is now set like wet cement. I mean, he's 10 points ahead. I mean, he's really just sitting there with Labour and the Tories around 21, about 8-9 points ahead is Reform UK. Nothing's budging, so these attacks are getting more vituperative. Yes, there's a lot of things happening there. There's a grouping of celebrities, unions against the far right. They don't mention Reform UK in their literature. The Daily Mirror said, like Reform UK, so others are allied ill into one group, but that's not where the campaign is. But no question, they are. As we go towards an election, there will be a lot of mud chucked about. This report in the FT, denied by Nigel Farage, he says this, no deals, just a reverse takeover. He would never do a deal with a party he doesn't trust. That goes back to 2019 when he stood down two-thirds of his own. You were seeing there on the screen now the tweet he put out there. That goes back to 2019 when he stood down two-thirds of his candidates to bequeath that 80-seat majority to Boris Johnson at the election. No thanks at all. He's very bitter about that. Kevin Badenoch says no deal. But for me, the talks happen after the election when the numbers are in. I can so imagine that Reform and the Tories saying, well, together we can form a government. We can't let Labour in or whoever for another 5 years. We'll do a deal. But that won't happen, I think, until post-election.
Chris, a lot of people watching this show might be confused that the hostile media is briefing that there could be some form of pact. What's in it for the FT? Why are they briefing that this... Because if you add the Conservative and the Reform vote at present, it's 50% of the vote. It would be a pact to annihilate the left. Why are they revving up something that doesn't exist? What's in it for them?
Well, I don't blame the FT. I don't blame the FT for reporting what they're told by donors. I just wonder whether the donors are trying to push them towards a connection. All business is all about what's round the corner, and there does seem a logic to Reform UK merging with the Tories, but I can't see it happening for the various issues with personalities. Some of the policies are a bit out of kilter, I think, certainly on the benefits issue, the True Child Benefit Cap, where Reform are supportive of what Labour's doing for British Indigenous nationals, but the Tories are not. There's elements of differentiation out there. That's why it can't happen. But I think, taking a step back, you can see why people who back the Reform and the Tories think, well, why can't the two come together? Let's look at this week. 3 former Tory MPs have jumped sides to Reform UK. And now I think it's 18 former Tory MPs rejected last year at the election are now Reform UK possible candidates at the next election. It looks like they're coming together, but I can't see it before the election. I think maybe donors are saying, come on, guys, get it together.
Well, let's find out now straight from the horse's mouth, because I'm delighted to be joined by the head of Reform UK's Department of Government Efficiency, Zia Yusuf. Mr Yusuf, it's a pleasure to have your company. Let's just head this one straight off, if we could. Nigel Farage just rubbished this straight away, saying it's ludicrous. It will cost us votes. What's your take on this so-called pact?
Yeah, it's completely fake news. It is made up. It is another smear in amongst, we've had smear after smear after smear campaign going for reform from all parts of the media, actually. And look, it's clearly done with a singular reason, because what they're trying to do is tell this story that there is a path to salvation and resuscitation for the Conservative Party. And actually, if you look at all of the MRPs that have come out, the latest one, I think, had the Tories on some 17 seats, which, as far as Nigel and I and everyone else at Reform, is probably 17 too many. As of May the 1st, the Tory party, we believe, will cease to be a national political party. You don't need to really speculate too much on that. We should look where they polled in Caerphilly. Remember that Caerphilly by-election? They polled at 2%. That is where they are currently. In Wales, they are not even on the map. In Scotland, they're going to lose a huge number of council seats across England as well. In May, they'll cease to be a going concern, I think, certainly nationally as a political party. We're hearing they're struggling to even accumulate enough candidates to fill a slate. And look, why would that not be the case? One of the reasons why reform has risen is because the Tory party betrayed the country. They betrayed the country. They threw open Britain's borders. They promised in 4 consecutive manifestos to bring net immigration down to the tens of thousands. Instead, shipped in 5 million net new people, left the country with fewer hospital beds, a few hundred more prison places. They let wokery run through our institutions. And on the economy, remember, they were the ones who blew up people's mortgages. They were the ones who tripled the national debt and took taxes on people to the highest level since World War II. They betrayed every principle they were elected to uphold. There is no chance reform would do a deal. And again, it is why is the Financial Times and this particular journalist who universally and exclusively publishes hit pieces and negative stories on reform, and why are the source of these claims, of course, Tory donors? Well, I think you can draw your own conclusions.
Apart from all that, Zia Yusuf, you'll be sending a Christmas card to Kemi Badenoch pretty shortly, no doubt. Could I ask you, Zia Yusuf, about the extraordinary spectacle yesterday of Sir Keir Starmer's Attorney General, Lord Hermer, steaming in, David Lammy steaming in, and today, are you quaking in your boots at the collective of Sir Lenny Henry, the TUC and the NEU? They're also queuing up to put the boot in.
Yeah, there are some forces we're up against that are quite formidable, but yeah, Lenny Henry is not one of those. But look, we shouldn't joke about what is happening in this country, and everyone should understand what time it is. I posted on social media yesterday, I think Britain is rapidly now descending into some form of authoritarianism. Can you imagine if Prime Minister Nigel Farage wins a general election and then immediately starts cancelling elections for millions of people across the country, and then he basically gets to work to ensure that people are locked up and police are showing up at people's doors for speech violations. Remember, Britain routinely tops league tables internationally for people jailed for speech violations. Then they're starting to talk about taking away trial by jury. Then you've got the an ongoing and appalling situation around digital ID, and obviously the Online Safety Act, which was a Tory invention, of course, but is getting even bigger teeth through the Labour Party. These are very dark times. And, you know, trial by jury has been a right in this country for hundreds and hundreds of years, dating back to the Magna Carta. They're not even really hiding it anymore. And by the way, that's before you start talking about the gerrymandering they're doing in terms of extending the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds.
This is Chris Hope in the studio with Martin, Zia. This is just conspiracy theory stuff, isn't it? I mean, you say formidable forces against you.
What is conspiracy?
What are you talking about?
Is David Lammy not, Chris? Is David Lammy not trying? You've been a political journalist for an extraordinarily long time. You tell me the last time a political party in government in this country started withdrawing the right to a jury trial to British citizens. You tell me.
But that's happening, of course, in response to the COVID pandemic. 80,000 cases yet to be heard, 40,000 before COVID started.
It is always through these sorts of situations that tyranny slowly starts to rise. And again, a lot of these hearings, a lot of people who will end up being put in front of judges and not get a hearing from their peers will be in the dock for speech violations. We know this stuff is coming.
The central point on the issue of formidable forces, I mean, people voted for Brexit, and the establishment, which you profess to say is against you, delivered Brexit, despite the fact that Brexit was not what the establishment wanted. Isn't it the case that if Nigel Farage wins the election, the establishment will simply bend to his will because he'll have the mandate to do so?
Well, let's look at what the establishment at the moment. And again, by the way, I forgot to mention there in terms of what's happening, you know, the fact that an Attorney General, who obviously sets the tone for the judiciary, has basically condemned Nigel and demanding an apology for something that apparently happened 50 years ago. So let's also dispense with the idea of the presumption of innocence. But look, this is not a conspiracy theory, right? We've got pretty much every mainstream media outlet now for a sustained period of time who have been against reform. We see time and again. I mean, you saw that even all the way into our schools. You saw there was a school in Ashfield that was teaching children. There's photographic evidence evidence of this, that they were teaching children that the far right included people like Lee Anderson, the MP, the Reform MP for Ashfield, and Nigel Farage. We hear all the time from people inside the civil service telling us that there are some people who actually support us, but please don't tell anybody because I'd be fired if anybody knew. And we can talk about the BBC. Look, we don't say any of this to complain. We have gotten to where we are despite all of this stuff. But the point we are making is that the only way we're going to be able to turn this country around is by taking on all of those establishments and ensuring that the will of the people finally gets to be fulfilled. And that, with Brexit, still hasn't happened. I mean, you say it happened. Well, it took an enormous amount of kicking and screaming, and we don't need to relitigate everything that happened there. You all saw it. You had a front row seat. It was actually an enormously challenging process to actually get anything done. And then we look at what's happened since, of course. What did Boris Johnson do, Tory Prime Minister, having, quote, taken back control? He basically threw open the borders. He used that control to deliver several years of the most insane immigration, and then lied about it and claimed people didn't vote for Brexit because they wanted lower immigration.
Of course, Boris Johnson opened the doors to the so-called Boris way, but that's what the power of Brexit was, and he used those powers against what you think on controlling migration.
So he's simply delivering for Brexit because they wanted 3.8 million net new people in 5 years. Is that seriously what you're telling me? Because I think it was the opposite.
Yes, but he made a choice and he used the powers given to him by Brexit to do so, and you'll have the powers too. You'll be in charge too.
So, no doubt he did make choices. That's why I think he was the worst prime minister in this country's history. But the point remains, people voted Brexit not because they just wanted some abstract concept of control and to throw open our borders in an unprecedented fashion. They voted for Brexit because they wanted to secure our borders and reduce immigration. By the way, that was precisely the platform the Tories ran on in 4 manifestos in a row. And this brings us right back to the beginning of this conversation. Reform will never do a deal with the Tories because these people will say anything in order to get elected. They not only fail to deliver it, they do literally the polar opposite.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us on the show today. I appreciate your time. That's the Reform UK Head of Policy, Zia Yusuf. Thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Get some reaction from Nigel Nelson. You sat through all of that very patiently. It seems once and for all that a stake has been driven through the heart of any form of talk, of any form of pact. That was unequivocal. No deal.
Well, of course it is. Now, the Tories will say the same thing. If the electoral arithmetic is such that Reform don't have a parliamentary majority, yes, there will be a pact. And the same thing would apply to Labour. They may do a pact with the Greens. Although political parties need to actually be able to form a government, and coalitions are part of it. Zia Yusuf there was talking his own fake news. The idea that after May the Tory party will be no more is absolute nonsense. They will still have 20-odd MPs. They'll still be the official opposition. They'll still be going into the general election with that kind of number of MPs behind them. So there's a long way to go, but yes, there could be a merger, but as Chris has just said, it won't happen till after the election.
Nigel Nelson, Chris Hope, superb. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Now, still to come, we'll be discussing how significant the Your Party could be on taking the Muslim vote away from Labour MPs. And also next, the Women's Institute and the Girl Guides have both this week banned trans applicants. Is this a long overdue breakthrough of common sense? This is GB News, 5 months on the trot, Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on a BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:26. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Women's Institute has banned today transgender women, that's biological men, from becoming members. Now, they announced it can no longer legally offer formal membership to biological males from April next year, in light, of course, of the Supreme Court judgment from April last year. And this comes a day after this year, and this comes a day after Girl Guiding also made a change in its policy after being threatened with legal action by an outraged mother. Well, joining us now is the co-founder of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith. Susan, welcome to the show. Hark back to April when we thought, right, all these institutions will surely follow suit and logic will be applied. It's taken them until almost Christmas, but 2 in 1 week. The Women's Institute and Girl Guiding. You must be delighted.
Yes, although, as you say, we did think that there'd be more movement earlier. The fact is that these organisations should never have been allowing boys or men in the first place, especially the Girl Guides, because they don't even have the excuse of saying there might be people with a gender recognition certificate, because these children were all under 18. So there was absolutely no question that they could have had any sort of legal recognition of a change of gender. So it's actually, in light of the Supreme Court ruling, obviously they should have moved immediately, but there was never any legal basis for allowing men and boys into these organisations in the first place.
Isn't it interesting how it took an outraged mother to go to the Girl Guides and basically along that line of, why should my daughter share a tent, share a shower, share an intimate space with a biological male? The Girl Guides basically wobbled and pulled the plug.
Yes, and that's what we're seeing, unfortunately, that it is taking people applying the law and threatening organisations with the law to produce a movement. And that shouldn't be happening. They should be active and preempting these things. I do understand, though, there's a lot of pressure on them. If you look at any of the sort of message boards, there's a lot of very angry people who are saying they're going to organise all these letter writing campaigns. They're posing themselves as parents or volunteers or members in the case of the WI and claiming they're going to be writing angry letters. And obviously organisations do feel that pressure, but I would say, there's not as many of that side who want men and boys in these organisations as might appear. They've just been very organised in running these campaigns to try and put pressure on organisations.
And yet, Susan Smith, the WI have blinked, the Girl Guide organisation have blinked, but still, the government doesn't seem to have completely followed its own rules from the Supreme Court. NHS trusts, even the toilets in Parliament itself, the government seems to be dragging its heels on this.
Yeah, and we have the same problem, obviously, in Scotland, that we're having to threaten again ourselves to go back to court over the prison policy in Scotland. And, you know, while things like the WI and the Girl Guides are very welcome, it's spaces where women are at risk. I was at a meeting just today organised by the Women's Rights Network here in Scotland about sexual assaults in hospitals. And it's spaces like those where people are uniquely vulnerable, where we are not seeing the movement on putting this into action. And in the interim, women and girls are being hurt. But I would also say that in regards to the Girl Guides, you know, one of our concerns is how are they going to go forward with volunteers? Because we do know that there have been men who have got into positions of leadership, and we would like reassurance that these men are not, for example, going and staying in the accommodation with the girls on overnight accommodation. We understand completely that these organisations have male volunteers because there's always been dads helping out, or you know, a husband driving the bus or something. But what we really need reassurance is that they're not in the sort of leadership role, leading the guides and then taking the girls off for a weekend and staying in the accommodation with them.
OK, Susan Smith, that's the co-founder of For Women Scotland. We have to leave it there. Thank you, as ever, for joining us today on GB News. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Nigel Nelson, quick bit of reaction to you. Surely this is a victory for common sense, particularly with young girls. It should be a safe space for girls. Biological males shouldn't be there in the first place.
No, I think that's right. And I think that that's what the Supreme Court actually sorted out. So, I mean, in fairness, that the guides say that they're doing this with a heavy heart, and the WI says they're doing it with regret. But however, these are women-only spaces. And I've always said, well, I've been defending trans rights, that women-only spaces must be protected. Well, the Girl Guides quite clearly is one, and the Women Institute is certainly one. But all it's done is, it hasn't changed the position of transgender people. What it's done is it has just sorted out a confusion in the law, which is what the Supreme Court did. It's taken a long time because it takes a while to sort out exactly how these organisations will operate once they do it.
Nigel, we'll throw a quick curveball at you here. All of this has been done to protect girls and women, which I totally support. What about the Boy Scouts? They used to be the Boy Scouts. They became the Scouts. Girls were allowed in. Why don't we go the full Monty? Let's get girls out of the Scouts and make it the Boy Scouts again. Boys deserve their own space too.
Well, I mean, I think that they probably do. If the Scout movement wants to have a Boy Scouts again, that's fine. But at the moment...
Yeah, but they won't. You know they won't.
Well, no, on the basis of that, if you've got girls and boys mixed together, there's no reason why there can't be trans children in there as well.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if the whole point about the Supreme Court judgment is to make sure that women-only spaces are protected.
It's not the trans guides. No, it's the Girl Guides.
That's for the Girl Guides, but we were talking about the Scouting movement. If you were to have boys and girls together, there is nothing to stop trans children then joining that group.
Why not?
Well, because they've got boys and girls together. Well, the whole point here is...
I'm saying let's go back to the Boy Scouts in the good old days. Well, boys deserve their own spaces too. It's equality, right?
If the boys want to go off and form their own Boy Scout movement once again, that's fine too.
OK, dib. Thank you very much, as ever, Nigel Nelson. We've got to move on now. Lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including we'll be discussing how significant the Your Party votes could be, or in fact the broader independent vote, taking the Muslim vote away from Labour MPs. Could this be the Labour Party's second Brexit? Last time they lost the white working classes. This time, may they completely lose the Muslim vote? But first, it's time for latest news headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top story is a Commons clash as Kemi Badenoch claimed the Chancellor might even have been prosecuted for market abuse over last week's budget. Sir Keir Starmer said the Tory leader's completely losing the plot, insisting Rachel Reeves did not mislead anyone. A nursery worker has admitted a calculated and predatory campaign of sexual abuse against 4 children in his care. 45-year-old Vincent Chan pleaded guilty to 26 offences as police continue to examine dozens of devices and families demand answers over how his offending went undetected for years. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the German president to number 10 Downing Street. This marks the first German state visit to Britain in 27 years. The president's visit will also include a state banquet, speaking in Parliament and visiting German footballers who play in the Premier League. And the Health Secretary says he's had it with the BMA, accusing the union of juvenile delinquency ahead of a 5-day resident doctor strike just before Christmas. West Streeting warns the walkout is irresponsible and high risk. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather around for many of us for a little bit longer, but generally through the rest of the week and into the weekend it's looking pretty unsettled. There's a front to the west of us and various areas of low pressure that are going to come through, so yes, there will be some rain, there will be some strong winds to watch out for as well. For the time being though, actually through the rest of today, apart from some showers towards the west and perhaps the south as well, there's a lot of dry weather around, some bright spells turning into clear spells through the start of the night. Though across western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, but also western parts of Wales and southwest England, we are going to see some rain pushing through as we go overnight. Further east ahead of the rain, where we stay dry with clear skies, could turn a bit chilly again, could see some fog patches developing once more. Then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a wet start then across parts of Wales and some central southern parts of England. Drier but cloudier towards the southeast, some showery bursts pushing into the southwest. Heavy persistent rain across Northern Ireland, some high rainfall totals could cause some issues here. A bit damp across northwest England and southwest Scotland, a bit drier further north and east because that rain won't have pushed through just yet. Like I said, there could be some fog patches as well down that eastern side, so watch out for those. They could cause some difficult driving conditions. That rain eventually does make its way further north and eastwards, but it pushes through quite slowly, so it could take quite a while to clear away from parts of Scotland and northeast England. It could be until after dark that we see things turning drier here. Elsewhere, something drier, brighter following in from the west, but also a few showers to watch out for. Slightly fresher air coming in as well behind this front, and so if anything, temperatures tomorrow are going to be down a couple of degrees compared to today. Most places away from the northeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy and a bit damp, will turn drier and clearer as we go into tomorrow night. So that means it's going to be quite a chilly one with some fog again on Friday morning. But like I said at the start, unsettled weather to come into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for sharing over 5 million comments on your say. Because when you talk, we listen.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 eastbound at junction 14 off-slip has restrictions due to a broken down vehicle. Approach cautiously. On the M4 westbound, from junction 22 at Pilning and Prince of Wales Bridge to junction 24 at Coldra, congestion slows traffic. In Cumbria, delays on the A595 northbound between the A5093 Silecroft and the A5086 add up to 40 minutes longer. Derbyshire's A38 southbound between the A50 and the A5132 has a 20-minute delay. And on the trains, Grand Central and Great Northern report major disruptions between Peterborough, Cambridge and London. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 4:38. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party might be going the way of the dodo, but that isn't stopping some Labour MPs from worrying a lot about losing the Muslim vote or even losing their seats altogether. Now, Tom Scottson has written in the Telegraph today that some Labour MPs feel that if they lose the Muslim votes, could be the equivalent of a second Brexit moment. So, Why are some Muslims abandoning the Labour Party? Well, I'm joined in the studio by the politics reporter at Politics Home, Tom Scottson, as well as GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Tom, welcome to the show. An excellent piece, and I totally concur. It's something we talk about a lot on this show. The red wall, I think, has gone. Yes. Labour's lost the red wall, but now they're getting a second battlefront on the left. The Muslim vote is a huge, huge erosion of their left vote. Tell us all about it.
So I think you're completely right that if you look at parts of the red wall now, they are gone. The white working class has left Labour, and it left Labour after the Brexit referendum. Now, people are looking at the left of Labour, and this is just progressive voters, but also Muslim voters who have been a core tenet of Labour's vote. 80% of Muslims voted for Labour in 2019. That is a huge amount. But now if you look at it, especially in the 2024 election after the war in Gaza, that the Muslim vote now is thinking, well, we don't have to be loyal to Labour. We can actually win on our own. We can back independent candidates anyway that are more, closer to many of their views than some Labour candidates that have been parachuted in. And I've been around the country. I've been to Bradford, Burnley, and people say, well, we've had enough of Labour, like many red wall seats, and we want to back our own candidates.
Because what you have here is a fascinating collision of the woke left and, let's be honest, conservative Muslim values, and they don't concur. The Muslim independents that have already won a few seats and will win more, they don't agree with trans rights. They don't agree with a lot of things that the progressive left agree with, and they think the Labour Party's been too soft on Gaza, creating the perfect opportunity for their vote to be nibbled away.
And I think, as you said, at a macro level, so looking at the country, it's very difficult to organise this. But as I've spoken to people in the Muslim vote about this, which is, a bigger organisation that is trying to really look at constituencies and find the best candidate, whether it's Green, whether it's independent, they know now they're a lot savvier with technology that they can back an individual candidate. And I think this has really put Labour under strain here. It's, what do we do? Do we pick candidates that are really good for HQ, or do we pick candidates that are better for single constituencies? And I think this tension is going to play out. And as we were talking about before, that your party might be in demise. They might have had a bit of a joke of a conference. People were laughing, obviously, about it afterwards and the infighting. But don't let that be a distraction.
Yeah.
That this is a huge electoral change that we're about to see in the next few years.
And Tom, you make an excellent point again, something we've been keeping a very close eye on this show. And that is, if the independents can't get their act together, there's always the Green Party. The Green Party, again, has become this unholy alliance in many contexts of the old muesli chewing kind of progressives, the white middle class liberals, places like Bristol, places like Brighton, and they've welcomed some of the more conservative Muslim candidates. And they, in the latest polls, the Greens are due to even take Sir Keir Starmer's seat, David Lammy's seat, Wes Streeting losing to the independents. This emergence of a Muslim vote is not only dangerous to the Labour Party, it could cost the Prime Minister his job.
Oh, for sure. As you said, we were talking about the article there, is that the Greens have got a much more charismatic leader than your party. He's taking Keir Starmer head-on from the progressive angle, but also as well telling voters, not just progressive activists, but Muslim voters as well, that we've been a lot more clear on Gaza than Labour have, where they've obviously, Labour are in power and they've always thought, so they've got to take a more pragmatic line, whereas the Greens can, very, very clearly go, we're against the war in Gaza, and we can look at that.
Tom Scottson, Nigel Farage called this out months ago, the emergence of sectarian politics in the United Kingdom. Those on the left went, don't be ridiculous, that sounds a bit racist. It is, isn't it? This is the emergence of sectarian politics.
I think we're starting to see now, anyway, that people are more likely to vote on religious lines. I think that this is something now that people have realised, particularly that they maybe in the early 21st century, you saw George Galloway was very successful. You saw Lutfer Rahman as well, now the mayor of Tower Hamlets. But those were anomalies. Now I think we're seeing the emergence of, as you said, politics where people can stand up for religious lines. And this is a really new thing in England. May not be Northern Ireland, but England for sure.
It's absolutely fascinating. Nigel Nelson, the Labour Party have got a problem. They've got a problem to the right. They're being eviscerated by the likes of Reform, and to the left by the Greens, Corbyn's party and the independents on their own. And I think that's a fascinating point that Tom raises there. This could be their second Brexit moment.
Well, I mean, certainly I think that the scenario that you and Tom just described shows the volatility of politics in this country at the moment. A lot of things are up in the air. I mean, your party didn't have a great conference, as we've we know from the
bath. Well, let's be honest, out in the country.
I think that the fact that they wanted a collective to lead it, and sort of 16 of them. I mean, you can't have 16 prime ministers, so that's not going to work out.
They rejected Corbyn as their own leader.
Well, it was never going to stand as leader. The whole point was to have this collective membership, collective leadership, which simply doesn't work. But when you're looking at the election time, Gaza may not be an issue come next election. So we don't know if the Muslim vote will go the way it did over the last election.
I don't think it's about Gaza anymore.
Or whether it would come back to Labour.
Tom, what you're saying, I don't think it's about Gaza anymore. I think that was a moment where it allowed them to gravitate out around an issue, but that was just a way in.
Gaza was the catalyst. There's no doubt about it, but it's far deeper than that. And I think when you go to constituencies with larger Muslim populations and you talk to them on the ground, whether it's the councillors, whether it's the people that live there, and I have been, you see that they've been angry at the Labour Party for years, decades even, and it's about flooding, it's about their interaction with the community, it is about parachuting candidates. And I think this may be the problem for Labour, is they see that they've recognised a Palestinian state, they feel that they have been closer to the progressive activists maybe in the last year or so on this issue. But in reality, this has been brewing for many years now.
Tom, can I ask you a question that many on the political right say? And they said they get gravely concerned about the greater establishment of a Muslim voting bloc because it could be a way in for things that are perhaps more unsavoury, such as Sharia law. Do you think there's any validity in that?
I don't think that was never raised really when I've done my interviews, but I guess that what you could say is that there is definitely a fragmentation of politics, that there is more extremes that are coming out, because now, and it's the sense of any form of media or anything in kind of business, is that once you fragment the market, there are different parties that can satisfy needs. And of course, if they can represent 5 or 10 seats, then of course there is a market for more extreme politics.
Tom Scottson, I think it's an absolutely fascinating article. I think you've absolutely nailed it. You're superb. Please come back on the show.
Oh, thank you.
A great guest. That's the Politics Report at Politics Home. Tom Scottson, bang on the money. Nigel Nelson, of course, always bang on the money. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up next, Jaguar. Well, they've reportedly removed the individual behind its pink brand relaunch. Remember this? The wokest advert on the planet. Is this yet more proof that if you go woke, you go broke? But meanwhile, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The weather's looking quite mixed across the Mediterranean through tomorrow and much of this week. There's further heavy rain towards the east affecting Greece, Albania and other nearby nations. Could see some severe thunder, landslides, other impacts as a result because it has been so wet recently. Other areas will also see some rain at times. There will also be some drier, sunnier bursts, but it's often going to be relatively unsettled and there is a bit more rain for many to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, I think after the first incident, obviously, I became hyper aware of how men can behave in London. But since sharing my story in February, I've had hundreds of women come forward and tell me their stories. It was actually so overwhelming, the amount of people that reached out to me and said, thank you for sharing your story, thank you for talking about it, because this had happened to me and that had happened to me. And I think also because I became aware of it, I don't know whether I started to see it, whether it was rising, but what I do know is that the amount of incidents happening are not the amount of incidents being reported.
One of the controversial issues, Genevieve, here in America is that in certain states, President Trump has put the National Guard on the streets. They have it here in Washington, D.C., and these are kind of volunteer
soldiers, if you like. You can see some pictures here. So that's me there with them, and that's Ben Leo, our other host. And you just have groups of them. They're in groups of sort of 3, 4, 5 sometimes on the street corners. We were coming back from a soccer match, football match. I've been here too long. That evening, and you feel safe because they are a very clear presence on the street. Do you think we should have something similar in London?
Yeah, I mean, if there were repercussions and men thought that they were going to be caught and that there were going to be witnesses and that they were going to be held accountable, that would decrease the rate of these kind of attacks happening, because you're going to weigh up whether it's worth it, aren't you, as a
of course
person.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Jaguar, the car brand, they've ditched the designer behind its pink brand relaunch. Remember that? What many people described as their woke rebrand. Some people saying actually it was one of the worst rebrands in the entire history of advertising. Now, this comes as last year Jaguar featured high fashion models, as you can see on your screens, preposterous stuff. A new logo and a bright pink colour scheme, but crucially, not a single car was in sight, let alone a Jaguar. Well, let's now speak with the Jaguar author. Delighted to be joined by Philip Porter. Philip, a pleasure to have your company. You must be delighted that the woke nonsense has been ushered out and Jaguar can get back to what it's best at, making damn fine cars.
Well, you're absolutely right. Spot on. I couldn't help feeling that perhaps it was actually just a joke. And they were going to come back in 2 years' time and say, we took you all in. It was, in fact, a joke. Now we're going to produce something more serious, because it was absolutely hilarious and ridiculous. Commercial suicide, I described it as.
Well, the individual behind it is no more. What would you like to see from the brand? Presumably not people with asymmetric haircuts in pink dresses with sledgehammers doing precisely zero to do with cars.
Well, again, absolutely, you're spot on. I mean, it's just totally unrelated to cars at all. It wasn't even a car in the advert. Jaguar was built on style, and that brought passion for cars. That's what made them different. I remember many years ago, a Jaguar executive in the States saying to me, people say, I like my Mercedes, but I love my Jaguar. It's all about passion. Style engendered that. That's what we've got to have. We need to see a proper, more traditional, stylish, real Jaguar that can build on the brand and heritage of the past.
OK, Philip Porter, I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you're in charge of the next Jaguar advert, what would it look like?
Ah, yes, you really have, haven't you? As diametrically opposite and different as it possibly could be from what they produced. I suppose, I mean, I live a little in the past, I admit, although I also think I'm hopefully realistic about the current situation and everything, the present. But I'd like to see the heritage shown. Jaguar were not afraid to talk in the past about their heritage, the Le Mans wins back in the 50s, the E-Type in the 60s. This is what added excitement and luster to the brand. And when they went through tough times, with poor quality and that sort of thing. It was the brand that kept them alive. It's extraordinary, for 20 years. So I think one needs to build on that, hark back to the great heritage. Don't be ashamed of it, be proud of it.
Philip Porter, you passed that job interview with aplomb. You absolutely nailed it. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Philip Porter, the Jaguar enthusiast and author Nigel Nelson. Isn't that the point? Stick to what you're good at. Making sexy cars, make them racing green, make them V8s. Give your customers what they want, not this woke nonsense.
Well, I don't think it's particularly woke, the advert that they put out. What I do think is you can't have a car advert without a car in it. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
How is that not woke? It's some geezer with a paintbrush.
I know, and no cars there. My point is that if you're going to advertise a car...
That looks like a trans model in a dress. It's got sod all to do with cars.
If you're going to advertise a car, I mean, you'd have all these people in it, as long as they have the car there. Anyway, I mean, Jaguar, I've always thought of Jaguar as being something that is stylish for the young go-getter, and that's the sort of advert that I would like to see for the car.
I agree with Philip Porter. I think it's more James Bond. It's racing green, it's sex appeal, it's a glass of scotch, you know, perhaps it's a cigar, perhaps it's a glamorous side assist, and all the things not allowed to do anymore. That's what I think people want. Let's get out of here. Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. Now, plenty more to come in the next hour, including Nigel Farage has slammed the fake news media of a ludicrous backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? It was Lord Hermer yesterday, it was David Lammy yesterday. Today it's the Financial Times and the mainstream media. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. First though, here's your weather with Alex Burkill.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather around for many of us for a little bit longer, but generally through the rest of the week and into the weekend it's looking pretty unsettled. There's a front to the west of us and various areas of low pressure that are going to come through, so yes, there will be some rain, there will be some strong winds to watch out for as well. For the time being though, actually through the rest of today, apart from some showers towards the west and perhaps the south as well, there's a lot of dry weather around, some bright spells turning into clear spells through the start of the night. Though across western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, but also western parts of Wales and southwest England, we are going to see some rain pushing through as we go overnight. Further east ahead of the rain, where we stay dry with clear skies, could turn a bit chilly again, could see some fog patches developing once more. Then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a wet start then across parts of Wales and some central southern parts of England. Drier but cloudier towards the southeast, some showery bursts pushing into the southwest. Heavy persistent rain across Northern Ireland, some high rainfall totals could cause some issues here. A bit damp across northwest England and southwest Scotland, a bit drier further north and east because that rain won't have pushed through just yet. Like I said, there could be some fog patches as well down that eastern side, so watch out for those. They could cause some difficult driving conditions. That rain eventually does make its way further north and eastwards, but it pushes through quite slowly, so it could take quite a while to clear away from parts of Scotland and northeast England. It could be until after dark that we see things turning drier here. Elsewhere, something drier, brighter following in from the west, but also a few showers to watch out for. Slightly fresher air coming in as well behind this front, and so if anything, temperatures tomorrow are going to be down a couple of degrees compared to today. Most places are away from the northeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy and a bit damp, will turn drier and clearer as we go into tomorrow night. So that means it's going to be quite a chilly one with some fog again on Friday morning. But like I said at the start, unsettled weather to come into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you so much for helping us to reach 8 million followers and subscribers across our social media channels. That's 8 million fearless Brits standing up for what really matters.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 eastbound at junction 14 off-slip is delayed due to a broken down vehicle, so please approach cautiously. There's congestion on the M4 westbound from junction 22, Pilning and Prince of Wales Bridge, to junction 24, Coldra. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound between the A50 and the junction with the A5, 132, has a 30-minute delay. Meanwhile, Birmingham's M6 northbound between junction 6 and 7 has a 20-minute hold-up due to a collision. Kent's A20 eastbound is fully closed under road management conditions. And on the trains, Grand Central and Great Northern report major disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the big one. Your chance to win a whopping £85,000 in tax-free cash. The largest cash prize we've given away to date. That's like over £7,000 a month extra in your bank account each month for 12 whole months. That's a year of yes. Yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to shopping trips, yes to home improvements. For a chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK, all the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a corker of a show and here's what's on today's menu. Yesterday, Lord Hermer, and of course that is Sir Keir Starmer's Attorney General, and the Deputy PM, David Lammy, joined forces to smear Nigel Farage for 50-year-old racism claims that Mr Farage has consistently denied. Today, the so-called fake news media has accused Reform of a ludicrous backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out at number 10? And also today, the Women's Institute and the Girl Guides have both banned trans applicants after the Girl Guides were threatened with legal action by a furious mother. Now, with April's Supreme Court ruling finally being acknowledged, is this a long overdue breakthrough of common sense? And the Scottish Government is set to announce a national review on its rape gang inquiry. The independent review will assess if a public inquiry into abuse networks is indeed needed. And this comes amid heavy political pressure on the SNP, as several survivors have spoken out to GB News. And the German president today begins his 3-day state visit. Pictures on the screen there of the president with the Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Downing Street. And he's also joined the King and Queen at Windsor. Now, this comes as a major £20 million UK-Germany investment is announced. And we'll bring you all the latest throughout the show, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Yesterday, it was the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, and David Lammy, the Deputy PM. On the day he cancelled jury trials, he was the judge and the jury for 50-year-old allegations against Nigel Farage, demanding apologies for events that Nigel Farage has consistently said didn't even happen. Today, we've seen an unholy alliance of Sir Lenny Henry. Remember him? He's back from the dead. He's joined forces with Paul Weller, with Charlotte Church, with Paloma Faith, and with the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, and the NEU, the National Education Union, Britain's biggest teaching union. They're taking to the streets in March of next year against the so-called far right. Tommy Robinson gets a name check. The Daily Mirror, their friendly media, is bringing Reform UK and Nigel Farage into that Venn diagram. My question to you is quite simple today. Are we seeing the beginnings of the most dirty general election campaign in British history, the likes of which we've only ever seen before on the other side of the Atlantic to keep Donald Trump out of power. Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so, or you can use that fancy new QR code on the corner of your screen there if you're so technically inclined. But now it's time for your news headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. We start with breaking news that the Scottish Government has announced a review into the handling of complaints against grooming gangs. It'll be led by independent expert Professor Alexis Jay and will inform any future decisions on whether a judge-led inquiry is necessary. The Scottish Labour Party welcomed reports that the Scottish Government will order the independent national review, but said it must now be carried out with the urgency and the care needed. Elsewhere, a fiery first Prime Minister's question since the budget, with Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashing over claims the government has lurched into total shambles. The exchanges opened with the Conservative leader questioning who inside Labour's cabinet is briefing against the government and claimed a CEO with Rachel Reeves's record would have been fired.
We now know that the head of the OBR was forced out for telling the truth, that the Chancellor did not need to raise taxes on working people. We also know that the Chancellor was briefing the media, twisting the facts, also she could break her promises and raise taxes.
Sir Keir Starmer hit back, defending Rachel Reeves, who told MPs his government is fixing the mess the Conservatives left.
She's completely losing the plot. She says take responsibility. Under this Chancellor, Mr Speaker, growth is up this year, defeating and beating the forecast. Wages are up, more since the general election than in 10 years of the Tories. We've had, I think, 5 interest rate cuts, NHS waiting lists are down, we've had record investment into this country. We're turning the page on their austerity and reckless experiment on borrowing. I'd compare that record to them every day of the week.
In other news, the Health Secretary says he's had it with the British Medical Association, accusing the Doctors' Union of juvenile delinquency as resident doctors plan a 5-day walkout just before Christmas. West Streeting says the strike starting on the 17th of December is irresponsible and high risk, warning the NHS is already under New Year's Eve level pressure. The BMA says it's still open to calling off the strike, but the government says it cannot go further on pay. West Streeting says industrial action now poses a different order of magnitude of danger for patients.
It is unnecessary. Resident doctors have had a 28.9% pay rise, the highest in the public sector 2 years on the trot, and I suspect there aren't many people watching this morning who've had a 28.9% pay rise. So I think it's completely unreasonable for the doctors to be threatening strike action. It's also unnecessary. We want to work with them on things like increasing the number of jobs and training places and their working conditions, so they've got a government that wants to work with them.
A nursery worker who filmed himself sexually abusing children over several years has pleaded guilty to 26 offences. 45-year-old Vincent Chan from Finchley in North London admitted what prosecutors called a calculated and predatory pattern of abuse, targeting 4 children at a Bright Horizons nursery where he worked for almost 7 years. Police say Chan secretly recorded some of the abuse, including images in the most serious legal category. Detectives have now seized nearly 70 digital devices linked to him and warn their investigation is still ongoing. Families of all 700 children who attended the nursery during his employment are being contacted with specialist support offered. He will be sentenced at a later date. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the German president to Downing Street. It marks the first German state visit to Britain in 27 years. The president's visit will also include a state banquet, speaking in Parliament and visiting German footballers who play in the Premier League. Earlier, King Charles and Queen Camilla and the Prince and Princess of Wales welcomed him to the UK for his state visit. He and the First Lady were greeted with a royal salute, military procession and national anthems. The Prime Minister says the government will do more to help parents access baby formula at more affordable prices. Speaking at Prime Minister's Questions, Sir Keir Starmer told the House of Commons the plans would help parents save up to £500 before a child's first birthday. The change is intended to help those who cannot or choose not to breastfeed their babies and alleviate child poverty. Regulators proposed sweeping changes for the baby formula industry in February after finding many brands cost more than the weekly value of people's benefits, leading some parents to forego food to buy the product. The Kremlin insists it's wrong to say Vladimir Putin has rejected a US peace proposal for Ukraine after talks in Moscow ended with no compromise on Russia's demand for territorial concessions. Russian officials called the meeting with Donald Trump's envoys constructive, but Ukraine's President Zelensky says his team is now preparing for fresh talks in the US. It comes as NATO foreign ministers gather in Brussels, while EU chief Ursula von der Leyen confirms a provisional deal to end all Russian gas imports by 2027. Earlier, Vladimir Putin dismissed Europe's conditions, saying they're not acceptable and warning if Europe wants a war with us, we're ready right now. And just some breaking news before I leave you. It's understood that Labour MP Marcus Campbell-Savers has had the party whip suspended after rebelling against the government in the budget vote. More on that story in the next hour. And those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3306 and €1.1416. The price of gold is £3,162.79 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,698 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Just to repeat that, breaking news just coming into us here at GB News. The Labour MP, Marcus Campbell-Savers, has had the party whip suspended, we understand, after rebelling against the government in the budget vote. Let's just repeat that breaking news. The Labour MP, Marcus Campbell-Savers, has had the party whip suspended after rebelling against the government in the budget vote. We'll have some reaction to that in the studio in a moment's time. But before that, earlier on today, we witnessed an extremely fiery PMQs, and the opposition leader, Kemi Badenoch, hinted the Labour government was a total shambles.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister believe that when an organisation descends into total shambles, the person at the top should resign?
Mr. Speaker, I was very proud to lead this party at the budget last week, where the Chancellor set out that we would protect the NHS, which we've done in the budget, create the conditions for economic stability, not repeating the mistake of austerity, and bearing down on the cost of living by taking £150 off energy bills. We're fixing the mess that they left, and I'm very proud to be doing so.
It all kicked off there at PMQs earlier on. Let's just get back to that breaking news. Just come into as I repeat it for you again. The Labour MP, Marcus Campbell-Savers, has had the party whip suspended after rebelling against the government in the budget vote. He's had the party whip suspended. Let's get some reaction now. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the Labour MP for Bury North, and that's James Frith. And I'm also joined, of course, on Wednesdays all day for 3 hours of arguing by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, I'll come to you first, just to bring our viewers up to speed as to why the parliamentarian was suspended. Of course, it was the key vote last night on the budget. He voted against the government's budget, his own budget. How did he vote, and why do you think he's had the whip suspended?
What it was an amendment put down which was to try and remove the inheritance tax on farmers.
Right.
He voted for the amendment against government policy. This is the finance bill going through, which, as you say, is the budget. That is in political terms, a capital offence, and you almost certainly will get the whip suspended for doing it.
OK, just to read, that's being reported. We don't know if that's actually gone through yet, but let's get some reaction, if we could, by the Labour MP for Bury North, James Frith. James, always the way, you walk in to talk about something else and something happens, but I need to press you for an answer. It's pretty much to be expected, right? If you're a backbench MP and you're voting against the budget, you're going to get the chop.
Well, I don't know about the chop, but certainly the whip's been removed. I think that's fairly standard par for the course. Politics is a team game, and voting against your government's budget, even at an amendment level, is not the thing to do. It's less an own goal as it is about scoring a goal against the government that you are representing as a Labour MP. It is rightly taken very seriously, and I think it's right that the whip is withdrawn. I don't know Marcus. He'll have his reasons for doing it. I suspect he represents a constituency that is more affected than most. But the policy is the right one. There were some concessions actually in this budget that went further, but the inheritance tax and the farmers' allowance actually is still more generous than the inheritance tax that the vast majority of those that do pay it have to pay.
And we understand his constituency is a rural constituency in Cumbria. There have been rumours for a long time of a 20-strong rural rebellion amongst Labour MPs around the inheritance tax, something that the farmers have consistently said all they want to do is sit down with the government and discuss. They come in the studio all the time. They would like to see a progressive system where those with the broadest shoulders, a Labour phrase, pay their fair due, pay more. But the smallholders pay less. In fact, they're exempt, so we don't pull apart those family farms. And when you think about the actual amount of sums of money that are raised from that inheritance tax hike, it's only about £1.5 billion a year. Well, that's a tenth of what your government just threw away on benefits. Perhaps the Labour government should listen to rebels like this.
Well, there's not been any throwing away on benefits. It's about lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, and I'm happy to talk about that. On the issue of the farmers' tax, actually, there has been lots of listening and lots of representation made to the government, hence why the concession to allow for the transferal of assets between spouse, which is a big step forward for that community. It's a concession by the government, but I maintain the view that those that pay inheritance tax, of which only about 4% of the entire population ever will pay inheritance tax.
Well, that will increase as the brackets are frozen.
If we can just finish that point. For the small minority that do pay inheritance tax, this is still a far more generous rate of 20%, which is 50% lower than the average inheritance tax. So I think it shows concession. The government has listened. Strong representations are frequently made. And obviously, my colleague has opted to vote against for the reasons that he alone can explain.
Do you understand the public anger you can say that 500,000 kids have been lifted out of poverty. It's a laudable thing, but it comes at a price, and the price has been 9 million extra people being dragged into higher tax brackets. And a lot of people will be feeling the pinch. A lot of people who get out of bed to go to work are feeling that this was a budget for the work shy.
The vast majority of people for whom are set to benefit from the lifting of the cap get up every day and go to work. They work very hard for their poverty. It's one of the reasons why the government needs to drive up wages and reduce and drive down on costs. Look, I keep in mind, last week was UK Parliament Week, coincidentally, nothing to do with the budget, but it's about sending MPs into schools. I started the week on Monday morning in one of the poorest areas of Bury North. It's 42%, nearly one in every door is in absolute poverty. And it's those children that I think about when a government that was elected on a mandate of change opts to fund lifting 500,000 kids. These are kids out of poverty.
Jane Frith, could I get to the constant attacks from the Labour Party, from the Prime Minister yesterday, from Lord Hermer, Keir Starmer, of course, his Attorney General, David Lammy, on the day he axed jury trials, decided to become the judge and jury against Nigel Farage for allegations consistently denied 50 years ago. The Labour Party is obsessed with Nigel Farage. It's going to be the dirtiest election in history, isn't it?
Well, look, the government statement yesterday on jury trials was to restrict and therefore protect jury trials, definitely not to scrap them. The right of a jury trial will remain, and the right to a fair trial will remain. Not for a small minority, no, but we're happy to get into that on a more technicality. But to your wider point, look, for a start, the Labour Party understands the threat that any opposition party mounting a credible challenge poses to the government of the day. But there has been some pretty significant developments around the Farage deal with, that he's been telling donors that he'd do a deal with the Conservative Party, was forced to deny that. And of course, he would say that.
Well, he called it ludicrous and says it's absolutely foundationless. And it was briefed by Tory donors trying to damage Reform UK.
Say that. The minute he's under any scrutiny, he says he doesn't know anything about it. And we've seen the same with some of the pretty awful accusations being levelled at him for his time at school. But he's also not yet come forward with plans for an investigation on the guilty Nathan Gill, who was found to be a spy. He has not apologised for that. He's not taken responsibility for that. He's also not disclosed what conversations or what activities or what questions or what behaviour.
He has said, to be fair, I mean, he has said this happened a long time ago. UKIP is now disbanded, as far as Nathan Gill's involvement in it. He said he didn't really know anything about it.
The constant thread is Nigel Farage, though. And as a man, look, I mean, it's a reasonable challenge. You talk about Keir Starmer, we talk about Nigel Farage. Absolutely. That is the deal that you enter into in public life. And under scrutiny, we either find out more that isn't very good or nice, or he cowers away and denies.
Is this strategy of playing the man and not playing the ball working? The polls would suggest not. Labour Party's polls have gone downhill faster than Eddie Edwards. They've gone off the White Cliffs.
Cultural reference.
Yeah, but seriously, it's not working. It didn't work.
I don't think it's
Donald Trump.
I don't think it's
How about go on policies, go on valid things, not things 50 years ago, not some other person who did something else you might not like. I think actually get down to policy and take it on toe-to-toe that way.
Well, I think it's both, actually, because you do have to understand you have to scrutinise the values of the leadership, the values of the representation. But actually, if you want to go on policy, well, look at the damage they're doing to local authority, where they're stripping away services, and yet they're having to rehire consultants at twice the price, having promised that they would get rid of all the waste. Actually, what they're doing is wasting money and neglecting services that are both statutory and required in the areas that they're responsible for.
You could say the same thing about the Labour Party in Wales.
They're the example. Well, the Labour Party in Wales and then the general election that's happened gave a substantial mandate for change that this Labour government is underway with. I discount the idea that this is only about the man and not the policies. There's plenty of policy to attack Reform and Farage on, which we do consistently.
Do you think it's working, calling Nigel Farage a racist and comparing him to some of the worst characters in history? We saw a school in Ashfield this week, with pictures of Lee Anderson, who's the constituency MP, and pictures of Nigel Farage alongside pictures of Adolf Hitler, of Mussolini. Is it time the Labour Party just realised that calling somebody a racist it's a broken record?
No. Work. I mean, there's still plenty of reason why you would call somebody a racist, not least if they're racist. But I find that, I wasn't aware of that, hadn't seen that at all. That's an abhorrent thing to do. And if there were people at the school, or I have no idea. So, but I would call that out. I would gladly, I've shared and been at events with those people that you've talked about. I have no. There's no truck with any of that behaviour. It's abhorrent, and we've seen it in both actually the far left and indeed any attacks on the right wing as well. It's not acceptable. No problem calling that out. But then but what I do call out is policies where you've got the Justice Lead for the Reform Party talking about, sick of seeing so many black and Asian faces in adverts. We call that out. That's racist. That is racist. Not an observance. It's racist. So it is about calling it out, but it's about being ready.
But it does happen to be true. Channel 4, that far-right media organisation, their own data shows it's undeniably true. You're disproportionately far more likely to see black, ethnic minority people in adverts than you are versus the population as a whole. That is true.
Okay. I mean,
some people might say that the advertising industry lives in a kind of parallel universe to the rest of society, and when you say something about it,
if it did, you and I probably would not be buying any goods, and I haven't stopped shopping or being persuaded by ads that I see, not least in the social media world, where I'm a bit too ready to part with my money on a Black Friday deal or something. But look, I'm comfortable with what advertising does. I'm comfortable with the numbers of black and Asian faces on our screens. I think that becomes the contribution by the Reform Member of Parliament, the newest and latest, the same week as well, where we're seeing failed Tory MPs joining the Reform ranks, which you will have heard, as you've already cited some of the Labour rhetoric, you will have heard us say, you vote Reform, you get the Tories. Well, that literally is becoming truer and truer with every day. And they're not even first-team selection Tories. They're failed Tories who didn't get elected. Jumping ship or switching lanes or whatever, however you want to call it, because they think their prospects for themselves are better becoming Reform MPs or candidates or members. They've no interest in serving the country as what it needs. As to the answers, they had nothing credible to say in response to the budget, and they've been non-existent. Final point on the Farage thing, from me at least on this, the day of the budget, I think Farage talked about Enoch Powell and Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. What answer for anything does that give constituents like mine in Bury North or across your viewership? There's no credible answers to it.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a forthright exchange. Your first time on the Martin Daubney Show. Please come back. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. That's the Labour MP for Bury North, James Frith. And also thank you to Nigel Nelson. Now, coming up next, more reaction to Sir Lenny Henry, who is among celebrities backing a new anti-far-right campaign aimed at combating the rise of the far-right, and the Daily Mirror are including Reform amongst that. That's next. You're on GB News, 5 months on the bounce, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 5:26. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Paloma Faith and Suella Henry, well, they're among a group of celebrities backing a new campaign aimed at countering the rise of reform and street protests led by activists such as Tommy Robinson. It's called the Together Alliance, and it's a group of campaigners, unions and civil society groups. It's urging people across the country to stand up, as they say, for unity in the face of attempts to fuel division. Well, let's now speak with the Pink Lady protester, and that's Orla Minahan. Orla, welcome to the show. I was very, very keen to get you on today because we've spoken before about this. The likes of Paloma Faith, Charlotte Church, and now Suella Henry saying, people like you, working class women, get back in your lane. You're being far right. How dare you protest about the changing face of the nation?
Oh, Martin, this is my favourite subject, as you know. The champagne socialist lovies out shouting and ranting about awful women like me who are so disgusting and divisive and trying to separate everybody and to create this awful racist rhetoric. No, women like me who have never said anything racist in our lives, have not said anything that was untoward or trying to, divide the community. We just have merely said we don't want unscreened, undocumented men flooding into our country because we are concerned citizens and concerned mothers. That's all we are. And this, we need to all come together and we need to have this unity. How many of these migrants do you think Paloma Faith and Charlotte Church have in their houses in Belsize Park and Hampstead? Not very many, I wouldn't imagine.
And isn't that the point here? Suella Henry, of course, in his latest book, wants to give away billions of pounds in slavery reparations for the damage the empire caused. Paul Weller, of course, famous, the front man of the Jam and the Style Council. But here's another point. It's now involving the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, and the National Education Union, Britain's biggest education union. We hear all the time, Orla, about our children being force-fed politics. Are you concerned that Britain's biggest teaching union seems to be briefing against potentially a future reform government?
Absolutely. Look, when did we stop being a democracy and allowing people to have their views? Why are we far right? Does that make them all far left? Why can't we just be centre, right and left of centre? Everybody is entitled to their opinion. It doesn't mean that one is evil and one isn't and one's virtuous. It just means that we have different opinions. And, what makes me die about Paloma Faith and Charlotte Church is the fact that they are the first ones to be at those pro-Palestinian marches shouting about, death to Jews, but they're the ones that are so virtuous and go around saying how much they love everyone and want to sing Kumbaya. It's just the irony of it makes me so annoyed. Why are they ganging up on people that don't have the same opinions as they have? And why are these teachers' unions, putting on our children their opinions? The point of being a teacher and the whole, scenario of a child going to school is for them to learn to read and write and develop their own mindset, not be, brainwashed by lefty teachers who, think and teach that the right are evil. Why are we? We just have a different set of priorities and a different set of views to you. That doesn't make us bad people. It just makes us different to you.
OK, Orla Minahan, we have to leave it there. Thank you for your passion, as ever, on the show. Appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, let's have some reaction now back in the studio from our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Just to sort of clarify, there's no suggestion that Paloma Faith or Charlotte Church shouted anything such as those phrases mentioned there, death to the Jews. Let's be absolutely clear about that. But back to this point, there is a gathering sense now that the kitchen sink will be thrown at this next general election. The kitchen sink will be thrown against Nigel Farage to get him into power. Protest is fine. Suella Henry, he's a millionaire. He's decorated by the nation. He's proof, actually, racism doesn't exist, you could say. But here's the broader point. Should we be concerned that school unions are taking to the streets against the so-called far right? And they're clearly going to include in that Venn diagram potentially a future Prime Minister in Nigel Farage.
Well, no, I think it's perfectly legitimate for a to protest. Traditionally, unions, the TUC involved in this, the National Education Union, would normally support a Labour government. That would be the way that they would go. So it doesn't surprise me that they're coming out against reform. And as Orla has just said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. So on that basis, if the NEU want to get involved in a protest against the right, they have every right to do so.
But it's not just the NEU, it's not just lovies like Sir Lenny Henry, Paul Weller, Paloma Faith, Charlotte Church, and former Doctor Who Christopher Eccleston, you know, the luxury belief class. It's also Lord Hermer yesterday. It was David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, demanding apologies from Nigel Farage for things he has denied even saying 50 years ago. My point is quite simple. We're about to see the most divisive, corrosive and poisonous general election campaign in history. And it's being led from Sir Keir Starmer, from the Attorney General, from the very, very top. Why can't they take people on policies rather than trying to character assassinate them?
Oh, because that's what every politician would actually say. Why don't you talk about policies, not personalities? It is not what the public is interested in. The public is interested in people. One of the reasons for reform success is Nigel Farage. He's a very popular figure out there. People are really interested in him as a person. So personalities in politics really matter. So, yes, you do end up playing the man, not the ball. That's what politics is about.
It's not working.
Whether it works on is a different matter, and I think that
Labour are going backwards in the polls.
Yes, they are, and it may not work, but the whole thing is that every general election, when it comes, it can be pretty dirty. And at the moment that Labour are most concerned about reform, they're less concerned about the Tories. Most of their attacks are therefore against reform.
OK. Nigel Nelson, always a pleasure to have your expertise. Thank you very, very much. Now, stick with us because plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, as I always say, please stay safe out there. Here is your traffic and your travel update, and please stick with us.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Drivers on the M8 eastbound at junction 14 face restrictions due to a broken down vehicle. The M4 westbound near Corriton is congested on the off-slip, anticipating delays. A broken down vehicle on the M4 westbound between junctions 19 and 20 in South Gloucestershire is closing one lane. Expect a smoother journey later. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound is congested between the A50 and A5132, creating 20-minute delays. The A20 eastbound in Kent is closed. And on the trains, Grand Central services face major disruptions between Peterborough and London. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon. The top stories. Labour MP Marcus Campbell-Savers has had the Labour whip suspended after voting against the government last night. The Penrith and Solway MP rebelled and voted against the government's plans to impose inheritance tax on farmers last night, telling the Commons he had to do all he could for his community. A Commons clash today as Kemi Badenoch claimed the Chancellor might even have been prosecuted for market abuse over last week's budget. Sir Keir Starmer said the Tory leader's completely losing the plot, insisting Rachel Reeves did not mislead anyone. Nursery workers admitted a calculated and predatory campaign of sexual abuse against 4 children in his care. 45-year-old Vincent Chan pleaded guilty to 26 offences as police continue to examine dozens of devices and families demand answers over how his offending went undetected for years. And Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the German president to Downing Street. It marks the first German state visit to Britain in 27 years. The president's visit will also include a state banquet, speaking in Parliament and visiting German footballers who play in the Premier League. And those are the latest headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather around for many of us for a little bit longer, but generally through the rest of the week and into the weekend it's looking pretty unsettled. There's a front to the west of us and various areas of low pressure that are going to come through, so yes, there will be some rain, there will be some strong winds to watch out for as well. For the time being though, actually through the rest of today, apart from some showers towards the west and perhaps the south as well, there's a lot of dry weather around, some bright spells turning into clear spells through the start of the night. Though across western parts, Northern Ireland in particular, but also western parts of Wales and southwest England, we are going to see some rain pushing through as we go overnight. Further east ahead of the rain, where we stay dry with clear skies, could turn a bit chilly again, could see some fog patches developing once more. Then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a wet start then across parts of Wales and some central southern parts of England. Drier but cloudier towards the southeast, some showery bursts pushing into the southwest. Heavy persistent rain across Northern Ireland, some high rainfall totals could cause some issues here. A bit damp across northwest England and southwest Scotland, a bit drier further north and east because that rain won't have pushed through just yet. Like I said, there could be some fog patches as well down that eastern side, so watch out for those. They could cause some difficult driving conditions. That rain eventually does make its way further north and eastwards, but it pushes through quite slowly, so it could take quite a while to clear away from parts of Scotland and northeast England. It could be until after dark that we see things turning drier here. Elsewhere, something drier, brighter following in from the west, but also a few showers to watch out for. Slightly fresher air coming in as well behind this front, and so if anything, temperatures tomorrow are going to be down a couple of degrees compared to today. Most places away from the northeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy and a bit damp, will turn drier and clearer as we go into tomorrow night. So that means it's going to be quite a chilly one with some fog again on Friday morning. But like I said at the start, unsettled weather to come into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a warning that some viewers may find the following story distressing. Paul Remmer, who suffered terrible abuse in his childhood, but he's managed to overcome his trauma and become a world champion fitness model, where he's now sharing his story in a brand new book, and it's called Breaking the Silence. And I'm delighted to be joined in the studio in Westminster by the man himself, Paul Remmer. Paul, welcome to the studio. It's inspiring what you're doing. On International Men's Day, we talked about how it takes men and boys who've been abused typically 20 years to speak out.
Yeah, that's right.
That's typical of your story. If you wouldn't mind, Paul, would you mind sharing with our viewers what happened to you?
Yeah, so when I was 5 years old, one of my family members' friends was looking after me one day, like babysitting me. And then on that day, it was a well-trusted friend of our family, was babysitting me and took me upstairs, and he raped and abused me. So from then on, I've suffered and suffered. One of the things that he did say to me was that he would kill me or hurt me in my sleep. So ever since then, I've always suffered with PTSD, night terrors. It never goes away.
It took 20 years for you to face it to
20
this.
years, yeah, to ever come out about what had ever happened to me. My parents didn't know. I didn't tell them anything.
Because a lot of men in your position, a lot of boys in position, they'd rather just take the burden of shame on. That comes at a great, can come at a great cost.
Yeah, lots of friends and family. And I was just scared to tell them, because obviously as well, if I did ever say anything about it, he was going to come and get me. And that was the whole thing of my dreams.
But that didn't happen. To your eternal credit, you made it, and you discovered fitness and you found a new purpose and you've strived through. Tell us about your amazing recovery and how you became a champion.
Right, so as I was going older, I needed help. I didn't know, So I managed to find an organisation which is charity run called Arch Teesside, which is near where I live. And I went to go see them. And my therapy at the time, the guy was called Dave Taylor. And he was a big guy, full of tattoos, and when you see somebody, you think, how am I going to open up to somebody of this man, And I hit it off like straight away. And I've always told him, this is what I love doing. I love going to the gym. I want to step on stage by the time I'm 40. And then that's what I went and did.
And look at you there. I mean,
what modelling shots, yeah.
I mean, absolutely sort of amazing sort of figure of a man. But what I'm so interested in, Paul, is the focus, the dedication that fitness gave you. That you're, isn't that the point? That the recovery is about having a focus, having that framework, and that's what you found.
Yes, it was. Yeah, because when I started doing that, I felt like the endorphins and everything I was feeling made me feel good about myself. And I was letting, not like all the anger out and stuff in the gym, but it just made me feel good, and I could switch off in the gym and everything. And ever since then, I've just gone. But then I went on to the next level of like competing. I thought, because why can't I do that? So then that's what I went and did, and then got really hooked on it and become a British champion, world champion, and it's absolutely gone mad from there.
And tell us about it. A lot of people will be going through difficult times at the moment. The country's in a bit of a state. Paul, tell us about how you utilised what was a low moment for you, and you just turned that on its head, and you made it such a driving force forward for you.
How I felt is when I first ever came out about it, and I started talking, that made it so much not easier for me myself, but people were understanding, me, if you know what I mean, and then I wanted to go on and help more and more people, because I was getting lots of messages from other people. Then they went and got help. And then I was like, I need to do this. There is hope at the end of all this. We can't just live in these dark days. We need to go on and get the help that we need. There is help out there. Find the help and, just go on and try and live a better life than, what these people have.
And the thing is, Paul, you're obviously a hard man, but you've got a soft centre.
I have.
Isn't that the point? But it's just so important. When you found, your mentor, he was a hard man with a soft centre. Encouraging people to talk about it. You said in your book there, hold your book up. People want to get a copy of this book. Tell them what it's called, mate.
Buy the book.
What's the book called, mate? Tell them.
It's called Breaking the Silence: A Champion's Journey.
And this is it. And your message that you say, if you help one other person out there to channel their pain into purpose, mission accomplished, mate.
Yeah, and I know it's already done this because I've had messages already. So it's helped a lot of people already, I know it.
You're an absolute legend, don't you?
Thank you so much, mate. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you by there, mate, and I'll take you for a pint afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Paul Bremer, absolute legend. Thank you very much for joining us today in Westwood. You were nervous, weren't you?
Very nervous,
You shouldn't have
mate.
been. You smashed it. Well done very, very much indeed. Now, if you've been affected by any of the topics discussed in this segment, then you can find help through the Samaritans, and their number is 116 123, and also you can go to the Samaritans website, and that is samaritans.org. Now, coming up, find out why number 10 could be secretly plotting to rejoin the European Union. Brexit is back. This is GB News with me, Martin Daubney.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The weather's looking quite mixed across the Mediterranean through tomorrow and much of this week. There's further heavy rain towards the east affecting Greece, Albania and other nearby nations. Could see some severe thunder, landslides, other impacts as a result because it has been so wet recently. Other areas will also see some rain at times. There will also be some drier, sunnier bursts, but it's often going to be relatively unsettled, and there is a bit more rain for many to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Excited about this because our most successful female Olympian of all time, Dame Laura Kenny, who also happens to be a Tottenham Hotspur fan, which also makes me extremely happy as well. 5 Olympic gold medals, is with us. Hello, Laura.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good. Lovely to see you. Listen, did you do the, of course, with all the medals and you and Jason and everything, did you ever do the actual carrying the torch?
I have never carried an Olympic torch. Nope.
That's the only Olympic thing probably you've never done, and I managed to pick up on it. What was your favourite Olympic? Because there was 3. We've got 2 medals in each. Do you have a favourite? It must be London 2012, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the most obvious one is London, right? I mean, I just think it was, as cliche as it sounds, it was a dream come true.
Oh, and on home turf as well.
It was, yeah. And I mean, I obviously grew up around there, so for me, it was just so special. I had so many people there.
At what point, is there a point though, because I love this with all sports people, and especially when there's all these amazing moments that they go through and when you retire as well, if there was one moment, if there's something or some moment, not even a race, but a part of a race, or is it a moment when you collect your first gold medal or the last one that stays with you more than anything else? What would that be?
Yeah, I think it was getting the medal, the very first medal. I mean, it was just, I felt like I was living in someone else's life. And really randomly, Paul McCartney was in there and he started singing Hey Jude. And that is like just stuck in my head because thousands of people randomly started singing Hey Jude.
My goodness.
Wow, what a story.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Now to a bit of Brexit, my favourite topic. The former Labour MP, Lord Austin, he's claimed that there is a secret plot to take the UK back into the European Union. And if rejoining the EU is too much to ask, then the UK could join the customs union. However, the government has denied this and insisted that they will respect the referendum result. Well, let's now speak with the chairman of British Influence, Peter Wilding. Peter, welcome to the show. Of course, you invented the word Brexit. You coined the word Brexit. How does that make you feel now that it's back in the news? Peter Wilding, you join us there. You invented the word Brexit. Now Brexit could be back.
Brexit seems to be back, that's right. But it's also no surprise. The government is looking at a black hole. It's not a government dominated by Brexiteers by any stretch of the imagination. And they're looking to fill the tax gap. And the lever of power that they can pull, they think, is to rejoin the single market and the customs union, which will is a plan, but it will never happen.
You think it will never happen because Peter Wilding, of course, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister now, campaigned in opposition for 3 long years to try and discredit, get rid of the Brexit vote altogether, to trample on the democracy of 17.4 million. He wanted a second referendum. Do you think he might secretly still be a rejoiner in disguise?
No, because I don't think he's a man driven by any principle whatsoever. I think the problem of the last year and a half is a government without purpose. If he had purpose, then he could have achieved a lot more. The purpose of driving the United Kingdom, after all the trauma of the last 10 years, back into the European Union will be unthinkable for a man who can't sell sand to the Arabs, never mind anything to the British people. So I think it's unlikely. But it's also unlikely, not simply because of the lack of courage of this government, because the European Union won't have it. It requires such a substantial amount of negotiation in the first place, but also they're looking over the horizon. Why appease a so an apparently pro-European government, as is suggested today, when they see Nigel Farage possibly knocking on the door at number 10 in a matter of 4 years' time. It's bonkers.
So, Peter Wilding, in a word, Brexit's back, but you don't think it's ever going to happen? We won't rejoin?
I think what will happen is that nothing occurs in the economy and that yet again, budget after budget is raising taxes. It's inevitable, given the fact there are 150 MPs who are members of the Labour Group for Europe who are angling to get back into the single market and customs union. The pressure will rise, no question about it. But it's a question of leadership, whether they will have the courage to follow through with it. But it's certainly on the agenda, no question about it.
OK, thank you very much for joining us today. The chairman of British Influence, Peter Wilding, the man who coined the phrase Brexit. Thank you for your time. Nigel Nelson, there we go. I thought he was going to sort of stop blowing smoke up Sir Keir Starmer. Quite the opposite thing happened there. Do you think there's a cat in hell's chance it will ever rejoin?
No. Certainly not in our lifetimes. We've gone through too much to get where we are, so there's no question about that. What we will get is a bit closer to Europe.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Not really, because I mean, all you're doing is you're trying to iron out the mistakes that Brexit left us with. So little things, well, not little things, big things. Europol, we're now back in Europol again, so we've now got access to DNA, fingerprints, criminal records of people that we need to know about. Our fishermen are complaining about the 12 years they've got that extra.
Well, they've been shafted by Brexit.
Well, no, they haven't. They can actually
They
can sell their fish in Europe for the first time.
They can't catch them. They're getting super trawls, hearing them out. We've got to leave it there. God, we're just getting warmed up. We'll have to finish this one in the pub. Now, next is Tubes and Code Tonight, hosted by the magnificent Alex Armstrong. Alex, what's on your menu?
Well, thank you, Martin. Look, Michelle's not here, but I can promise all of you watching at home we are going to have those fiery debates and intense political analysis on that Brexit plot. I don't quite agree with Nigel Nelson. I think there's more at play here, and we're going to be digging into that on the show. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has also come under fire again in this budget, with now accusations that she's lying about the deficit. How much money do you think we are borrowing now, and how much more higher do you think that deficit's going to be? Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, were they using fictitious information by the police? We'll find out after the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There is some fine weather